discussing this case with anyone since we left yesterday?
Yes.
Everyone said yes or nodded affirmatively. Were you also able to follow the instructions and refrain from doing any independent research or investigation into this case?
Mostly.
Did anyone happen to see, hear, or read anything about this case?
We have our guy from yesterday, and then we have some evidence witnesses.
You left yesterday. No, everyone said no or should. Thank you. Do we have Lieutenant Gallagher again, please?
Thank you, Julie. Can you tell them that we're live? One of you guys in the mod chat. So I'm going to do a face mask once I'm done eating my fries. I'm thinking it's a Medicube face mask day. So people will wonder why I look like Texas Chainsaw Guy again. But crime, face masks, and cats. That's my thing.
Mr. Gallagher, good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks for joining us again. I want to ask you a quick question about what we talked about yesterday concerning your search at the scene. If we could go back to that, when you engaged the leash patrol. During the time that you were removing materials in and around the area of the flagpole going out to the, I think you called it the berm, B-E-R-M, the berm, the curb.
Yes, that was at the street. There was a 6-inch Cape Cod berm. Yes.
Okay, and that led straight to the asphalt of the street, correct?
It's basically a curbing. It's
okay.
Where the property line, the grass, the lawn meets the street.
And you were searching the area where you believed Mr. O'Keefe's body to have been found, all the way out toward that curb or berm area, correct?
Yeah, we did not go out to the berm. We did about approximately 6x6, 7x7, about 50 square feet.
50
area.
Square feet. Okay, fair enough. But you did say at some point, I think on direct examination, you said that you exposed the berm.
Yes.
Just to give you some orientation as to where the curb was, where the street was.
And if it was possible, he may have tripped and fallen. Yes.
Okay. You did not recover or see a hat, a man's hat?
No, sir.
Black in color, like baseball style hat?
No hat. No, sir.
You did not see or recover a man's shoe?
No, sir.
And you said you searched for the area in that 50 square foot area by removing materials, moving the snow, getting down to all the way down to the lawn.
Yes.
Okay. You did not see a single piece of bright red plastic taillight material either, did you?
No, sir, not in that area.
As a matter of fact, you didn't see 46 pieces of taillight material, either clear or bright red plastic, in any part of the area that you searched.
No, the only thing we discovered was the blood sampling in the glass. That is correct.
Good morning.
Speaking of the glass, that's a good segue. You found that piece of broken drinking glass that you brought in and showed the jurors yesterday, correct?
That's correct.
Did you search the house at all to determine whether or not there was any matching glass in the home?
No, I did not.
Why? You find a broken piece of glass, a cup, a glass that's only got this much glass. Look at how much more there could be, and you didn't even go into the house to look for it? Canton PD.
You testified yesterday that you looked around when you were in the house. This is the second time you're at the location. So you went back with Sergeant Lake. I want to orient you to that time.
Hi, Pat.
That's when you actually entered the home for the first time of Brian Albert. Is that right?
That is correct, yes, sir.
And you indicated that you did look around the family room, the kitchen, and you didn't see any signs of a struggle or anything like that.
No, sir.
I asked you that exact question about a year ago at another proceeding. Do you recall that colloquy between the two of us?
Yes.
And at that time, I asked you, did you look around the house for any sign of a struggle or a fight? And your answer was no. Do you remember that?
Yes, I think that's out of context. I understood that question was, did I wander the house to look for any sign of a struggle? I believe you asked me if I asked me about a bulkhead and things of that nature.
Okay.
As I stood there, I have observations I can't see.
Right.
So I think it's just a miscommunication on what type of search.
Fair
what
enough.
type of observation.
Fair enough. Let's clear that up right now then, Ms. Gallagher. With regard to your the time that you were inside the residence, you did not seek to or ask permission to look around any place other than where you happen to be standing, which is right inside that front door.
WJAR.
Adjacent to the kitchen area, correct?
That is correct, yes, sir.
You didn't walk into any adjacent rooms?
No, sir. No, sir.
Okay, you didn't walk into any, you didn't search the kitchen area?
I did not, no, sir.
You didn't look through the cabinets or anything like that?
Absolutely not, no.
You didn't
New
look at the
stickers.
glassware?
Absolutely not, no.
You didn't go down to the basement, we talked about
Hi,
that.
Cindy
previously.
Lou.
Correct. No, absolutely not.
Okay, you didn't go out to the garage?
No, sir.
You
No,
didn't look around the garage?
no.
Other than walking in and basically where you just described,
Good
standing
morning,
while
Nita.
Sergeant Lank was engaged with Miss McCabe, you didn't do anything to search the interior of that house for anything?
No, I wasn't there to search at all.
Okay. You also didn't, subsequent to that, you didn't seek or receive a search warrant?
No, I did not.
Okay. You didn't believe that it was necessary, in your mind, it was necessary to seek a search warrant to search the interior of that house?
That's absolutely correct.
You were aware at the time that you did go into the house that Sergeant Lank had earlier reported at least the possibility that John O'Keefe may have gotten into a fight, correct?
I don't recall that. We went over options on how he could have come to where he was, and an altercation certainly was one of them.
Okay, so that's fair enough. So an altercation meaning was one of the, when you say altercation, that means a physical fight, correct?
Sure.
So that was a possibility in your mind.
Everything was a possibility at that time.
And at that time, you had the information that you found, Mr. O'Keefe's body was found on the lawn, a residence where there was alcohol, drinking, a party of some sort, or a gathering of some sort, just hours earlier, right?
That's correct, but the house had
Catnip, can you ask your husband to come back to the microphone, please?
nothing to do with the incident.
At least to your mind.
That's correct, based on the evidence, yes, at that time.
And the evidence at that time was simply your communications with some, but not all, the occupants of the house, including Jennifer McCabe, correct?
That is correct, yes, sir.
You didn't separate any of the witnesses that were, or any of the occupants that you saw inside the house, or you came across inside the house, for instance, by taking them to the station, putting them in separate rooms so that they couldn't coordinate testimony, things of that nature?
At that time,
At that time.
so Detective Sergeant Lank was there to speak with Jennifer McCabe only.
Okay. But there were others in the house.
There were others in the house, yes.
I'm just trying to figure out whether or not you took the added step of separating those witnesses, asking those witnesses potentially to join you down at the station, putting them in separate rooms, separating.
Mr. Jackson, you're talking to the guy that used a leaf blower for evidence and a solo cup. Did you forget from yesterday? That's who you're talking to.
Those witnesses. You did not do that.
Not at that time, no.
Okay. At any time, did you?
No, we shortly thereafter we were removed from the investigation. We removed ourselves from the investigation.
And before you were removed from the investigation, you just left the house after the conversation that Sergeant Lank had with Jennifer McCabe, correct?
Yes, after he took Jennifer McCabe's statement, we left the house, yes.
Is the reason that you didn't seek a search warrant or separate the witnesses or ask any of the potential witnesses to join you down at the station, did that have anything to do with your knowledge that the homeowner was a police officer?
Absolutely none. I've actually executed warrants on police officers' houses in the past, including police officers I personally worked with and had.
But is he the brother of, as I quote, best detective is Kevin Albert? Is he the brother of Kevin Albert, sir?
To charge some of their children. So that absolutely would not factor into a reason.
And it didn't factor in this case?
Absolutely not.
That's my question. It did factor into your decision making that Brian Albert was a police officer?
Absolutely not.
He didn't get any special treatment because of that?
Not by me, absolutely not.
Okay, not by you?
No.
Okay.
I can only speak to my personal knowledge.
Thank you
You
for
were
the
aware
comment, sir.
that, and you indicated yesterday, that the reason that Canton PD was removed from the investigation, or at least the interview section of the investigation, was because of a relationship of one of your detectives. You indicated your best detective, Kevin Albert, correct?
That's correct.
Or you gave Mr. Albert Detective Albert very high praise,
He's a very good detective, yes.
and you were his
The
direct
best.
supervisor.
I was at one point, yes.
Okay. You're aware that Kevin Albert was disciplined by the Canton Police Department for an incident occurring in July 2022, correct?
I am, yes.
But he's the best.
Do you stand by your testimony knowing that Kevin Albert is your best detective or was your best detective?
He's an excellent detective, yes.
You
Good
indicated that
afternoon, Patricia. Hi, Audra. Thank
you
you.
contacted your Deputy Chief Kelleher,
I almost did that.
and ultimately secured some solo cups from Deputy Chief Kelleher across the street, correct?
That is correct, yes, sir.
You were aware at the
Solo
time
cup.
that Deputy Chief Kelleher's house was adorned with a Ring video camera just over the front door, facing out toward the street and facing across the street, which would be facing 34 Fairview, correct?
That is incorrect. He does not have a Ring camera. I know that his system is an Arlo camera, and I have personal knowledge of
Arlo?
that because we've discussed cameras because we bought them approximately the same time.
My
Owl or owl? What? I know. Let's have a party because we're clearly not doing police work.
mistake, Arlo camera, ARLO.
I believe so.
Okay, that's still, although it's a different brand, it's still a home personal surveillance camera, correct?
Yes, but
And you're aware that those are motion activated cameras designed for security to capture images of things that may be going on outside the home.
that is correct, yes, sir.
May I approach you, Honor,
Yes.
briefly?
He didn't even get that.
Thank you.
Mr. Gallagher, would you take a look at that photograph that I just handed you?
Yes,
What's it marked for ID?
It is marked for ID, and Mr. Gallagher, if you could read that for me to save me a trip up to the stand.
I believe it's a 5, Exhibit 5.
Could it be an S?
It could be an S, yes.
I think it's S, Your Honor.
I apologize.
It is S? Okay, thanks.
Do you?
Thank you, Mr. Gallagher. Do you recognize
So did
what's
the
depicted in
neighbor.
that photograph?
I recognize the camera and the door.
Okay. Is that a shot of Deputy Chief Gallagher's, sorry.
That's okay. I know what you're asking.
Is this a shot of Deputy Chief Kelleher's front porch?
It appears to be.
Okay. Does that front porch face 34 Fairview?
We need a time frame.
I'm sorry, Your Honor?
We need a time frame.
Sure. Did you see that Arlo camera so situated when you went over there on January 29th, 2022?
I knew it was there, yes.
Okay. And is that a fair representation of what the camera looked like and its positioning, basically its positioning in January of 2022?
Yes.
Okay. Did you seek the footage? From the
No, I
camera?
didn't. I know what that camera captures.
Okay. Your Honor, with the court's permission, let me publish, I'd like to mark this.
How did this guy ever become police lieutenant? Anybody know? Because I'm hearing a whole bunch of reasons he should not be in a position like that. Oh gosh, really? I hope it's not.
For, as evidence, next in order.
Okay.
If I may approach.
Yes.
Right, Ashley?
53.
Don't forget your IMO stickers, guys.
May I publish, Your Honor?
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher, do you recognize this as being the photograph that you just saw, Exhibit 53?
That is correct.
Okay. I'm going to draw your attention, and by the way, there's one amendment to this photograph. There's a redaction of the address. You see that?
Yes.
You know what? That's a really good point. Thank you for sharing that. It makes a lot more sense.
Okay. I'd like to draw your attention to that area right there, which
Yes.
I'm highlighting.
Yes.
What is that?
That is the Arlo camera.
Can you orient the jurors for us, please, to what we're looking at in this photograph?
You're looking at a camera that's angled downward.
This is the
And is
defense.
it the front porch of that residence directly across the street from 34 Fairview?
It is not directly across from 34. It's actually more directly across from 32, so that would be incorrect.
Okay. Is it across the street from 34 generally?
Just say, is it across from the
is if,
flagpole?
Lieutenant Kelleher's house is here, 34 is over here across the street.
Okay. Is there a view from that front porch, just generally as you're standing there, if you were to turn 180 degrees and put your back to the door, is there a view of 34 Fairview as well as 32 Fairview?
Oh, sure, absolutely.
Okay. Did you seek, and we can take this down. Did you seek to secure any footage from that Arlo camera from Deputy Chief Kelleher?
I did not.
Of course you didn't.
Did you talk to Deputy Chief Kelleher about that footage?
I don't remember specifically.
Did you ask him
course you
whether or not he'd reviewed the footage for a determination whether or not it caught any of the incident that may have occurred at or around 34 Fairview on January 29th, the early morning hours of January 29th?
I don't know if I did. I know it would not have,
How do you know it would not have?
because I know what that camera captures.
How do you know what that camera captures?
Because I've picked up packages for Deputy Chief Kelleher in the past. I know it captures his doorstep and a portion of the front lawn.
So you've reviewed the Arlo footage from his iPhone?
He's just sent me a picture. Can I pick up when he's been on vacation, can I pick up a package on the front step?
Okay, so,
Yes, I've seen it.
so you've seen screenshots that
Sure.
Deputy Chief Kelleher sent you, correct?
I believe so, yes.
But you've never looked at the
You
actual
believe so?
application to see what it might encapsulate or what it might capture generally.
We've compared what we have our cameras set up as. We had communicated about security at our houses multiple times. I know it captured the front door and a portion of the front lawn.
Do you believe that it would have been best practices to go ahead and secure that footage so we don't have to take anybody's word for it? We could actually look at the footage ourselves.
I didn't do that.
Do you think that would have been best practices to do that, just to have belt and suspenders? So there's no question about what.
This is the former police lieutenant Gallagher. Yeah. And it's the defense questioning him, thank God.
Whether or not that camera that's facing, at least it's facing directly across the street, might have captured something of interest on the morning of January 29th, 2022.
To me, there was
You're
no
welcome.
expectation that it had captured anything, so I didn't think it was practical.
So because
I kept a lot of the serum on it. Think of me doing 2 for each of us.
of your expectation, you didn't seek the footage and you didn't secure the footage.
Because of my knowledge and expectation, yes.
And you now know that that footage is gone. It's
I
over
would,
with.
I would assume so. I'm not familiar with how long Arlo keeps footage.
So you're familiar enough that you decided that it wasn't important to capture the footage, but you're not familiar enough to know whether or not the footage is actually saved onto the Arlo system?
I don't know anything about it. I don't have Arlo cameras. I don't know anything about.
Didn't he
So you don't
just say he has the same one? Because after yesterday, how could I not be? I don't know how this trial is still going on. I don't know how this has not been thrown out. That's where I stand on this right now. Okay, so I wasn't the only one that heard that. He has Blink. Well, he didn't. He said he had Arlo. I hope your husband does.
But I have Blink, so we've compared our systems.
But you just said Arlo.
I'm not really sure what you're asking.
So you don't have an Arlo system.
I have Blink, correct?
You're not familiar with how Arlo works, correct?
Correct.
You're not familiar with the total array of where the cameras might capture versus what might be captured on your phone app, or that you can say, like, push a button that says packages or people. And
Yeah, but when he said that they had Arlo, he said, I'm familiar with it because I have it as well.
Just the focus of the camera, you're not aware of that?
I'm not aware of that, no.
Okay. But you would have been aware of that if you had captured the footage and simply said to Deputy Chief Kelleher, I'd like that ring footage for that 24-hour period.
Okay, it's not ring. And
I'm sorry, that Arlo footage for a 24-hour period.
So not only is it a house right across the street that he didn't collect evidence from, it was another deputy's house. So, no, Jesus.
Sure. Yeah. Well, let me ask you this. Did Deputy Chief Kelleher get any special treatment from you because he's a police officer?
no,
Did Deputy Chief Kelleher get any special treatment from you because he was your boss?
no, absolutely not.
Okay.
Really?
You know Brian Higgins.
I do.
How do you know him?
Brian Higgins is a special agent
Right,
with
Rhonda?
the ATF.
How long?
Guys, do me a favor. When you're stating stuff as if it's fact and you don't have a way to prove it's fact, please just put IMO, which means in my opinion afterwards. Otherwise, people will say Michelle was slinging misinformation in her chat. We don't want that.
I first became aware of Brian Higgins probably around 2016, 2017 when I was with the DEA and we were working a Title III investigation, which is a wiretap investigation into gang activity, drug distribution
Let me know if you find
in the
out.
Boston, Brockton area. I never had any personal contact with him at that time. He was just an agent in the group I was working for.
Ultimately, did that professional relationship seep into more of a personal relationship as well?
Thank you, Stephanie.
It did. So I think it was 2018 or 2019, the 18.
I understand that you watched a clip, but it's just something that we do here. We have to put IMO afterwards because I do state things as if they're facts. So if you could just add the IMO to what you're saying, I understand to you it's facts and you've seen it. I just would appreciate it.
EF had a satellite office at Canton PD, and he was one of
Thank you,
the
Lucy.
special agents
How
that
are
was
you?
assigned. Yes.
My mask is
So
falling
he
off.
actually officed in the
Okay, there we go.
brick and mortar location of Canton PD.
Yes, he did.
And did he maintain that office all the way through January of 2022?
He did. Yes.
Welcome back.
And during the course of your interaction with Mr. Higgins, did you become friendly
Wow.
with Mr. Higgins?
I've become friendly with Mr. Higgins. Yes. Most of my coworkers I'm friendly with.
Is it safe to say that you socialized at times with
I
Mr.
have.
Higgins?
I have. Yes.
Okay. You shared cocktails with Mr. Higgins?
Yes.
Shared meals with Mr. Higgins?
Yes.
Okay. So it is safe to say that you have both a professional and a personal relationship with Mr. Higgins,
Yes, I do.
and you consider him a good friend.
Yes, I do.
You were aware, Mr. Gallagher, that he was at 34 Fairview on January 29th, those early morning hours, during the course of the time when John O'Keefe went to 34 Fairview.
I'm sorry. Can you repeat that
Sure.
question?
You're aware that Mr. Higgins was at 34 Fairview in the home at the time that John O'Keefe went to 34 Fairview on January 29th, 2022.
By the time I became aware of it was afterwards. Yes.
Okay. That's what I mean. I know
Yes.
you weren't aware of it at the moment, but
Right, okay.
you became aware of it.
Later on, yes.
Okay. When did you become aware of it?
I'm not sure. It was after we were. I'm not really sure.
It
I
was
wish
during
I
the
knew.
time that you were dispatched over to Brian Albert's house to ultimately either begin the investigation or go into the home with Sergeant Lank and interview with people there, correct?
Yeah,
No,
what's a
that wasn't
tap
the time.
card?
No.
Didn't you say in a report to
His police ID?
Lieutenant Tully that when you went over to Brian Albert's house, that Brian Higgins was not there?
I don't recall Brian Higgins being there.
Right, so what I'm trying to register is whether or not you knew at the time that you went to Brian Albert's house, at least that second time, that you might or might not have expected to see Brian Higgins there because you knew he was at the home when John O'Keefe
No, Liz, we start late every day to get through the sidebars and breaks.
arrived the night before.
Can you rephrase that question? I'm not following you.
Sure. When you went back to, in other words, during the time that you were investigating and joining Sergeant Lank
Yes.
back over at Brian Albert's house, you knew that Brian Higgins
Okay,
had been
thank you.
somehow in that home the night before.
I don't believe I did at that time.
When do you think you learned that?
At sometime afterwards, probably when I saw the list and reviewed the narratives of the offices.
Would that have been days or weeks later?
No, it probably would have been, within 24 hours or so.
Okay, within 24 hours of your involvement.
Correct.
Okay,
yes.
that's what I was trying to get to.
Okay,
Thank
I
you for that.
apologize.
My bad. Bad questioning on my part. So within 24 hours of your involvement, which would have been, your
I'm
involvement
thinking that
was
too.
The early morning hours of January 29th.
That's correct.
Correct? Within 24 hours of that, you knew Brian Higgins was somehow tangentially involved or collaterally involved as a potential witness, if nothing else.
I'm not sure he was a witness to anything. I was aware that he attended the house at 34 Fairview after they left the bar.
Right. And you said, well, I'm not sure he was a witness to anything. The one way to figure out whether or not someone is a witness to anything is to actually formally interview them, correct?
That's absolutely correct.
Which you did not do.
We were removed from the investigation before I found out Brian Higgins was involved.
Okay, so you were
So
removed.
I wouldn't be interviewing him.
He's clearly not prudent in his investigation.
Were removed, and then it was within a few hours of that you realized that Brian Higgins was somehow involved.
Not a few hours. No, I said it was within 24 hours probably.
Okay.
So you didn't figure it out
You're
when
aware
Karen Reed
that-
called you back?
Mr. Higgins not only had
Or not
a
Karen Reed, Jim
office
McCabe.
at Canton PD, he also had a key card for Canton PD.
Yes, he did.
Explain for the jurors what a key card or an access card at Canton PD means. What is that? What is a key card for Canton PD?
So it's a secure building. I think we've all seen it. You have square boxes with the red light. The key card allows you access into the building.
Do you mean Kevin
And
Elbert?
depending upon your rank, you have different rights. Each individual has different rights to enter different areas.
My
You
opinion
had, for
too.
instance, being a top-level Canton lieutenant, you had a key card that was probably the functional equivalent of a master key card. You could get in pretty much any place you wanted.
Absolutely not.
Is
Okay,
that
where could you
the thing?
go?
I could.
Is the master key card like tap 2? Or am I just needing to get over tap?
It's easier if I say where I can't go.
That's probably
Would that
easy.
be, would that be work?
Explain that.
So I can't go to the armory, which is where weapons are kept and ammunition is kept, and I can't go into permanent evidence.
Okay. You're aware that Brian Higgins had a key card.
Yes, I am.
And that access card gave him access to pretty much, with the exception of the armory, possibly the evidence room, and what was the other location?
I think that's what I said, the evidence room
Okay.
and the armory.
With the exception of those, you're aware that Brian Higgins' key card gave him access basically to the entirety of the Canton Police Department?
Well, so I want to specify, I don't specifically know what Brian Higgins had rights to, but there are also parts of our department that are secured by key locks that he wouldn't have access to, and I don't have access to as well, offices and things of that nature.
I want to focus your attention on the Sally Port, if I
Okay.
could. You can enter the Sally Port, which is a fancy name for a garage, correct?
It certainly is, yes.
Okay. You
So somebody that was there also had access to the room they kept the evidence in and every other room. He never even interviewed him.
can enter that from the outside, meaning out in the elements. You come from a parking lot adjacent to or get services to Sally Port. You can enter from there, correct?
Yes, there's one pedestrian door on the main entrance side, and it's for location purposes. It's right beside the garage door that's marked number 4.
And the garage door is one of those big roll-up, industrial-style roll-up doors that comes up and down.
That is correct.
And then
Thank
you
you for
can
the
also
follows,
enter the
guys.
Sally Port from inside Canton PD, correct?
There are 2 locations you can enter the Sally Port from.
If you guys could do me a favor while we're watching, if you could just tap the side of the screen, it'd be greatly appreciated.
Inside, yes.
And Brian Higgins' key card gave him access to both of those locations. The pedestrian portal going into the Sally Port from outside, as well as the pedestrian portal from inside Canton PD.
That would be correct.
Okay.
I don't even know what to say.
Speaking of the Sally Port, you were, if not the person, one of the people who let Massachusetts State Police into the Sally Port on February 1st, 2022 to process the black SUV, correct? The Lexus.
I'm not sure if I was the one that gave them access, but like I said, I've testified to. I certainly would have.
Okay. That SUV had actually arrived on January 29th, 2022, 3 days earlier. Is that right?
I believe so, sometime after 5 or 6. I'm
So
not
it
sure of
was
the time.
in the Sallyport from January 29th all the way to February 1st, at least to your knowledge, for 3 full days in the Sallyport, correct?
2.5 to 3, yes.
Okay, from the time it arrived at Canton PD until it was processed out and moved out of the Sallyport, how many people would have had physical access to that SUV?
Everybody that possessed a key card.
And that's basically everybody at Canton PD that is a sworn officer, correct?
That is correct, yes, sir.
Maybe even some civilians, correct?
I'm not sure of the civilians. What civilian?
But do y'all have non-sworn civilians that?
We don't.
share things?
No, we do not. Well, we do, but I'm not
Thank
sure
you.
whether they would have access, what their access is.
So you mean to tell me the Alberts, the neighbors, all these people had access to Karen Reed's vehicle? I'm just so over this. I don't know how they have not thrown this case out.
So at least the entirety of the police department, sworn police department, correct?
The uniform police, yes.
As well as Brian Higgins, correct?
That is correct, yes.
Thank you.
Brian Higgins too.
Oh, by the way, can I go back to something?
Sure.
When you were at 34 Fairview, when you walked in with Sergeant Lank, you walked in through the side door or the main door?
Side door.
Side door into the family room, correct?
I believe it's a family room, yes.
Walked into the kitchen, correct?
I was by the kitchen.
Adjacent to the
Yep.
kitchen. Did you see a dog?
I did not.
No, Chloe?
Speaking of the Sallyport, I want to move back to the Sallyport. I apologize about bouncing around a little bit.
Perfectly fine.
You get
moving back
squirrels
to the
too?
Sallyport, you
You
indicated
squirrel
that
moment.
basically all the uniformed officers, every single uniformed officer at Canton PD would have had access to that Sallyport, as well as Brian Higgins. They also would have had access to everything inside the Sallyport, whatever was left there.
Yes,
SUV and other stuff, for lack of a better technical phrase, correct?
yes.
Okay. Did you photograph or did you cause to be photographed the SUV when it arrived on January 29th in your Sallyport?
We had been recused at that point, and I wasn't working when the vehicle arrived. So
I thought you said you were recused only from doing interviews.
from doing investigative interviews, but I wasn't present when, I wasn't working when the vehicle came in.
Were you also recused from, doing any reports?
So you could have taken photographs of the vehicle had you wanted to, or caused someone to do that had you wanted to.
I had no idea that vehicle was coming to Canton PD, sir.
Okay.
Hi, how are you
Once you
guys?
got to, as the lieutenant in charge at the scene, was it important to you to know that a seminal piece of evidence had been moved into the custody and control of Canton PD?
It wasn't important to me. It's the state police investigation.
Even though it
Again,
was on your property, in your Sallyport, with access through your key cards.
that's up to my chief. That's not up to me.
I see. To your knowledge, let me just ask it this way, to your
The whole thing with the dog is he had marks on his arms that looked like they were either bites or scratches. And that dog didn't get along well with others, and the dog also disappeared right after. I don't know.
knowledge, did anybody seek to photograph the vehicle when it arrived at Canton PD on January 29th, 2022, to your knowledge?
I have no personal knowledge of that.
No one
Have
even
you
took a
ever seen
picture?
a photograph of that vehicle that was taken by someone in law enforcement on January 29th? I'm going to give you 3 days. January 29th, January 30th, January 31st, sorry, 30th, or February 1st.
I have seen photographs. I'm not sure what days they were taken. The photos were taken.
You have not seen a photograph that was taken on January 29th, however, have you?
I've never seen anything dated January 29th.
You've never seen a photo, and I'm going to go through this a little bit more. You've never seen a photograph that was taken on January 30th, have you?
Yeah, I have never seen any photographs with any dates on them,
Okay.
I believe.
Do you think that would have been you were at the time the head of detectives, correct?
No, that's not correct.
You were not. You had already
Keep in mind, this is the same guy that used a leaf blower to protect evidence.
moved from that spot.
I,
In January of 2022, I may be wrong. I thought
You are wrong.
as the
It's,
lieutenant, you were also the head of detectives.
no, that was Lieutenant Kelleher at the time. I know you keep calling, it's a mix-up. So we've had promotions since January 29th, and I think that's where the mix-up might be.
How the hell did you
So
get a
he was-
promotion?
When you refer to Deputy Chief Kelleher, he was actually Lieutenant Kelleher, and he was in charge of detectives at that time.
At some point, had you been in charge of detectives?
I have down that he's retired.
I became in charge of detectives in June of 2022.
June of 2022.
Yeah, approximately 6 months later.
Understood.
There's the
You had
evidence
been a
gathering
detective
kit
previously, however.
That is correct.
down
Okay.
there in the chat.
As a detective, do you believe that it would have been important to photograph, had you had your druthers to do it, it would have been important to photograph that vehicle when it came in so that it could be memorialized and documented the exact condition that that vehicle came in on January 29th, 2022.
So this is important to know that unfortunately John O'Keefe was deceased at this time. Once John O'Keefe becomes deceased, it becomes the state police's investigation, the Norfolk County District Attorney CPAC investigation.
Hold the hell on. He was deceased when he left, and you went and used the leaf blower, the red Solo cups, and the stop and save, or whatever the hell it's called, bag.
That's why it is not our investigation. It's up to the investigating agency to make those
Misdirection,
decisions.
sunshine,
Even something
Thank you.
as uninvasive as taking photographs.
in my
Yes.
opinion.
Okay.
Do they not have cameras when they bring vehicles in? Do they not have cameras to see them at all? I know, Nella. I can't believe it either. Nella can't believe it.
You would agree, as a former
I know.
detective and former head of detectives, that there are protocols for securing evidence of all types, correct?
Correct.
Those protocols dictate that not only is evidence properly secured, it needs, once it's seized, it
Thank
needs to be
you,
properly
Julie.
secured, and it needs to be separated from other evidence to avoid something known as cross-contamination, correct?
Correct.
And you would agree with me that that is paramount
He's
in evidence
shaking.
handling in any investigation, correct?
Yes.
And that's because
Hold on,
once
baby.
evidence is cross-contaminated, its integrity basically collapses, right?
That's correct.
It's especially true of biological material, is that right?
Yes.
Because biological
You mean it still holds integrity when it's collected out of a red Solo cup?
material in like a shovel, the biological material on the shovel becomes hypersensitive. It's hyper important. It can be cross-contaminated with other items.
Sure.
It can tell an incorrect story, correct?
Yes.
It could tell, if there's cross-contamination, it could tell a false story.
It's been done. Yes.
And DNA, obviously, we're talking about biological material. The most sensitive of all the biological material is DNA evidence, right?
What do you mean sensitive?
So
Really?
it might take some effort to
Wow.
move saliva from one item to another. It takes almost no effort to move DNA
Catnip, will you ask your husband to come back to the microphone, please?
from one item to another and to detect it. You understand what I'm saying? The sensitivity of the detection.
No, I don't understand what you're saying.
Lou said that makes all the difference.
You understand that I could touch this podium and you might not get my fingerprint off of it.
Correct.
Might not, correct?
Might not.
What do you think about getting my DNA off that podium that I
Yes.
just touched? You're absolutely going to get it, right?
Yes.
Yeah. That's what I mean by sensitivity.
Okay.
You would agree that DNA is hypersensitive.
I would agree that DNA is better than fingerprints. Yes.
I'd like you to take a look at a series of photographs if we could.
I don't know how this guy ever had the position he had.
There are 4 photographs, Scott, and I'd like you to look at briefly and familiarize yourself with if you can. Mr.
I'm
Kelly,
all
do
set.
you recognize what's depicted in those photographs?
I do.
How do you recognize what's depicted in each one of those? There's 4 of them in front of you. Just generally, how do you recognize what's depicted in those?
If you guys could, while we're listening, help Catnip and Julie tap on the screen on this side, be appreciated.
Photographs.
Generally, I know this is the exchange of custody from the Canton Police to the Massachusetts State Police.
Are those taken inside the Sally Port, to your knowledge?
They are, yes.
Some of those photographs include the SUV,
One SUV picture, yes.
and some of those photographs include the blood evidence that you've earlier described. The solo.
For the love of God, if he says that there was no picture of the back of the SUV taken, I might break something.
Cups, the Stop and Shop bag.
That is correct, yes, sir.
That approach?
Yes.
I have a feeling he's going to say that, huh?
Your Honor, with the court's permission, I'd like to have these marked as next in order.
Any objections, Mr. Brown?
No objection, thank you.
Go tell Daddy, baby. No spoilers, guys. Virtual jury here. We take our role seriously. What is the problem? She got scared because of my face mask.
Thank you.
Thank you for the follow.
Publish, Your Honor.
Okay.
I'd like to start with what's been marked as 54. It shows a license plate. Do you recognize what's depicted in this photograph?
Yes, based on the location, the vehicle, the broken tail light, I believe that's Miss Reed's vehicle.
And do you know when this photograph was taken?
I do not.
Do you believe it was taken between January 29th and February 1st?
Yes.
But you don't know when it was taken?
No, I don't have personal knowledge, no.
I just want to draw your attention very briefly, just to orient us, to this area on the bottom right-hand corner. Do you see that, what looks like a white rag on the ground?
Yes, based on the pictures, I think it might be a paper towel, but yes.
Okay. If we could look at the next photograph, which is 55, looks like a paper bag.
There just happened to be a towel on the floor underneath where the light was broken. Hey, Kathy, how are you?
Do you recognize what's depicted in this photograph?
Yes,
What is that?
that's the Stop and Shop bag that contained the 6 samples.
Do you see the rag in that photograph as well?
Yeah, we could call it agree to call it a rag or
You think it's a paper towel?
I'm not sure. It looks like a paper towel on the picture in the pictures, but it's a white object.
Best
yes.
For all
evidence
I care,
collecting
the
effort.
white thing, that's
Yes.
fine. All right, and do you see that that's next to a tire just at the top of the picture? Just for
Yeah,
orientation purposes?
Yeah, it appears to be 18 to 2 feet, 18 inches to 24 inches behind the tire, yes.
Okay, and that, of course, is the tire of the SUV.
Yes, I would think
So
so.
that would be the right rear of the SUV, just a few inches from this bag, correct?
It would be a couple of feet from the bag, yes.
Okay, if we can take a look at the next.
I mean, I've heard whisperings, but being since I'm the virtual juror, and all of us here are too, we don't know because we're the virtual jury, but I mean, I've heard whispers.
Photograph. This is exhibit 56 for the record. What's depicted inside the bag?
Red
The
Solo
red Solo
cups.
And you still see the rag in the photograph.
I sure do, yes.
So the SUV would be right here, correct? At the top of the left.
Well, I can't see the top of it. It would be, it's nearby, yes.
Okay.
Now in
And
the house
not
is
just
evidence.
nearby, it's the right rear of the SUV that's nearby, correct?
Yes,
Okay. And one final photograph.
I feel like this is like a joke setup type thing.
This is 57, exhibit 57 for the record.
Wait,
What is
what's the red
inside
thing?
that? What's depicted inside that bag?
the red Solo cups with coagulated blood.
And these are the only, we can have the lights, please. And so if you take that down.
They're so efficient.
These are the only photographs that we have or that you've ever seen of those red Solo cups, that Stop and Shop bag, and the biological material in those red Solo cups.
The only ones I have seen, yes.
And those
But the big question is where's the leaf blower now, sir?
photographs that you see are within 2.5 feet from the right rear
That was sarcasm.
of that SUV, correct?
Approximately, yes.
And the right rear of that SUV houses the taillight material, correct? The taillight
The
area.
tail light area, yes.
The cups were not sealed, correct?
The cups were not sealed.
The bag was not sealed, was it?
As far as I know, what do you mean by sealed?
Yesterday you brought a box in, remember that?
Yes,
That box had tape on it.
that's correct.
What color was the tape?
Red.
Why is the tape red?
It can be red, it can be blue.
It's too. Oh my
Evidence
god!
tape
It's to
is
show that
different
no one
colors.
went in the
Normally,
bag.
in your experience, red evidence tape is used to formally seal evidence bags or evidence containers, correct?
Yes,
That's because it highlights to the eye a visual cue. Hey, that's important. It's been sealed. It's got bright red tape on it, correct?
correct.
Oftentimes, that tape has additional information on it as well, correct?
You could have initials on it of who put the tape on, yes.
Right. In other words,
Do we have any lawyers in the house? I have to know. Is there some kind of protocol that Bev could have started to get this thrown out? Because she's still sitting here listening to all this and seeing we're still here.
it might say evidence, correct? Might be pre-printed.
Pre-printed, yes, correct.
And it may have a place for initials to be.
Correct.
And one of the reasons that you initial it is because of that. If someone takes a razor blade and cuts through, or a knife and cuts through that tape, those initials are cut through. It has to be retaped and reinitialed, correct?
That is correct.
That is a basic protocol for chain of custody, is it not?
Yes,
And that's to maintain the care, custody, and control and the integrity over the items and the items inside the evidence container, whatever they may be.
that's correct.
Whether they are biological material, physical items of evidence, a document, whatever.
Correct.
Right,
None
Jessica?
of that was done with what we just saw, correct?
Correct.
I don't get it either. This is insane. I totally don't get it. I'm glad that
We've
you agree
agreed
on
already
that.
that the blood was stored in non-sterile Solo cups, correct?
Correct.
We've agreed that those cups were not sealed. The cups themselves were not sealed. There was no
Hi,
cap, there was
Brandy.
no
How are
plastic,
you?
plasticine, saran wrap, nothing put over the
Ma'am.
cups, correct?
That is correct.
So they were open.
Yes,
They were not in an evidence bag. They were in a grocery bag, correct?
they were, yes.
Yesterday on direct examination, it may have been on cross-examination, Mr. Gallagher, I don't remember. You said, I have no idea where Sergeant Lang got that grocery bag, correct?
I don't know where the bag came from, no.
Could have come out of his back of his car seat, correct?
I'm assuming it came out of one of the cars, yes.
No idea what had been in that bag previous to those cups with blood being in the bag,
I have
correct?
no personal knowledge of that.
And obviously that bag, it goes without saying, is not a forensically sterile item either, correct?
Most bags are not sterilized.
No,
And
hold
the-
on.
Not only the cups were not sealed, the bag that the cups were in was not sealed.
They were only closed, correct.
That's not closed.
You will agree that having unsealed and unsecured biological material, specifically blood material, situated right next to the right rear quarter panel of that SUV would not be within normal protocols for securing evidence, correct?
This was in the hands of a criminalist. There was an exchange of custody. I don't have any issue with it.
You don't know, you have no personal,
What you guys aren't hearing, I speak Cantonese, and she's objecting. She's just saying, I object, meow, 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 I object. In case you want to know.
knowledge of where that bag had been or where the cups had been previous to that photograph being taken.
Correct.
You will agree that having unsealed and unsecured blood right next to the right rear of the SUV is a recipe for cross-contamination, wouldn't you?
Not in the hands of a trained criminalist, I wouldn't know.
No, but it's sitting on the damn floor. The concrete that y'all walk over.
Well, generally speaking, there were other people there that weren't the trained criminalists, right?
There was a photographer who took the pictures,
Who's not a trained criminalist.
correct. But the cups weren't in his hands. It was in the criminalist's hands. Those are the criminalist's hands you see gloved in that photo.
That's not my question. My question is, there was
Oh no,
unsealed blood
to them.
and in an unsealed bag
No, that's Nella.
for how much time, you don't know.
No, Jody, this is today's. We start late so we can skip through all the breaks. This is this morning's.
Sitting right there by the right rear of that SUV, correct?
No, I do know,
How do you know?
because I'm the one that brought the bag with the criminalist to that area. They photographed it, documented it, and then they transferred it to their plastic containers.
And before you grab that bag, you don't know where that bag.
Jody, listen. We start late every day so we could skip forward when they have breaks. This is the beginning of this morning.
Bag had been for 3 days hence, 3 days before.
I know it had been in the temporary evidence room in a refrigerator.
You actually never saw it in the temporary evidence room in the refrigerator until February 1st, did you?
I don't recall.
So you don't know where that bag had been. You don't know who had handled those cups before you pulled them out of that temporary evidence locker, correct?
I have no personal knowledge if anybody else, I have no personal knowledge. I took them out of the refrigerator. That's all I can testify to.
Do you remember us talking about this about a year ago?
Yes,
And I asked you, would you agree that having unsealed and unsecured blood next to the right rear portion of the SUV is a recipe for cross-contamination? I asked you that question.
you did.
And you said, if I can speak to this incident alone, and I asked, that's a yes or no question.
That is correct.
Do you remember that?
Yes,
And you said, well, it's not a yes or no, but for your purposes, I would say yes.
correct.
So it is, at least in
I
your
don't
mind,
know.
a recipe for potential cross-contamination, correct?
Not in this particular situation, which was clarified later on.
Although you did say yes in answer
Hypothetically,
to my question.
Let's just pretend none of that matters. You took your own personal vehicle and used that to transport evidence. There's cross-contamination that way too.
Hypothetically, anything is possible, yes.
Jody, I highly recommend that you look down to see if you're watching live, dear.
Thank you, Your Honor. That's all I have.
All right, Mr. Brennan?
We are not. And it's not a debate. We don't start on time. It's that simple.
May I?
Right ahead, yes.
Lieutenant Gallagher, you mentioned that one of your colleagues who lived on Fairview Road had an owl camera.
Had an Arlo camera, yes.
Right,
That
Kathy?
day or that morning when you went to Fairview and looked around where Mr. O'Keefe's, where you were directed Mr. O'Keefe's body was, were you aware that that gentleman had a camera?
Yes,
You shared with us that you had familiarity with the angle of that camera. Do you have any information whatsoever that he or anybody on his behalf used the phone to change the camera angle?
no, I don't.
Do you know if that camera could even reach the street if you wanted to?
I'm not sure.
Do you have any information that there are applications or different things you can do to the camera to move it remotely? Is there any evidence or information you have?
No,
When you decided not to ask him about the camera, was that based on anything other than your already familiarity and knowledge of the angle that camera was set?
Yes, Angie.
no,
At any time he's ever shown you, you've
Except I believe they're on lunch.
ever seen clips from that camera, were they consistently showing the same area or did it change over time?
Objection, Your Honor.
I'll allow it.
they were the same.
In your mind, why didn't you go seek footage from that camera?
In my mind,
Yes.
because I knew it wouldn't have captured anything,
His mouth's not moving.
activated cameras,
There we
and
go.
he didn't have them on the street because it's a busy street and the batteries would die in them, and who knows very quickly if they captured the street.
You said that's a very busy street. Are you familiar with Fairview Road?
Yes,
Is that a road, is that a public road?
It's a public way in the town of Canton, yes.
As a public way in the town of Canton, do you know who operates and cleans and monitors that road? Who's responsible for that?
Yes, the Department of Public Works for the town of Canton.
You were asked about a claim of a fight. Did any witness ever suggest to
What
you
is your problem, child?
that Mr. O'Keefe had been in a fight?
I have no idea how
No.
this trial's still
When you
going on.
first learned about Mr. O'Keefe, did you get a chance to actually look at his body?
No, I did not.
Did you get a chance to look at his wounds?
No, I did not.
Did you get a chance to examine his clothing and whether there was any trace evidence left behind?
I'll allow it.
No, I did not.
Early in an investigation, when investigators have no information, is it common to speculate?
Yes.
Sustained.
What is the natural process for an investigator when you start upon a situation and know nothing about what happened?
In this particular case, we came up with scenarios that possibly could have brought John to that spot. And we were focused on trying to find out and hopefully getting to the hospital. Hopefully the Can't Fire Department in the hospital would save his life. And he,
Keep in mind, guys, it wasn't exactly a ring. It was an ARLO, ARLO, motion activated surveillance camera. I don't know if that makes a difference.
he could tell us how he got to where he was.
Was that anything beyond the surmise or speculation of detectives, or did that information come from a witness?
No, that was us. I guess you would call it spitballing on possibilities.
Did you ever come across a witness that said that this was, Mr. O'Keefe's injuries were the result of a fight?
No, we did not.
If we could play Exhibit 51, please. I want to ask you some questions about the area you searched where you were directed Mr. O'Keefe was.
Hank, at what point do you just say, you know what, I give up? I give up because I'm just going to be made a fool if I keep going on like this. Yeah, in a red Solo cup inside of a Stop and Shop bag. Catnip.
Stop it there, please, Ms. Gilman. You did not see exactly where John O'Keefe was when he was found?
No, I did not.
Who directed you to this area?
I was directed twice, first by Sergeant Good and then by Sergeant Lang, Detective Sergeant Lang.
You shared with us yesterday you were looking in that area where you thought John O'Keefe was found.
Correct.
You asked questions about
That is correct. They did it yesterday and they're doing it again.
the berm. Is that the separation between the street and the yard?
Yes, it is.
Jody, I'm not here to sit here and go back and forth with you about what's when. This is day 10, as it says up at the top. We start late every day to get through all of the breaks. This is the prosecution getting across after the defense. Again, I'm not here to debate with you.
Did you clear off a piece of that berm?
We did.
And the reason was?
We wanted to see what was there. We didn't know what was
Hi,
there.
Ruth. Thank
Did
you.
you do a search from the flagpole all the way to the street?
No,
Did you do a search of that flagpole across the front yard?
no,
Did you do a search from that flagpole all across the berm, all the way down the line?
no. It was approximately 15 to 18 inches.
And why such a limited search?
Because we had no other reason than it was a medical call at this time.
Did you see
Have a
snow
good
in
day.
other parts of the yard?
Yes, the entire yard was covered.
And other than Officer Lang's footprints across the front of the yard, no other footprints?
There were no other footprints.
Any other visible signs that anything was moved or dragged across that side or front lawn?
No, not at all.
Any doggy prints in the snow?
No, not at all.
You were asked whether you sought a search warrant. Is there a difference between a witness and an eyewitness?
Yes,
You were asked questions about people in the home and they were characterized as witnesses. Did you have any information that anybody inside that home was a witness to what happened to Mr. O'Keefe?
no,
Thank you, Wendy.
Did you have any information when you made these decisions about search warrants? Did you have any information from anybody, anywhere, that Mr. O'Keefe ever stepped 1 foot inside that home?
Going to allow it.
So
Turn the lights on, Mr.
Mr.
Bowman?
Jackson objected, and Bev said, I'm going to allow it, and then he asked for a sidebar. How is this the justice system in Canton, let alone anywhere in the United States?
Obtained search warrants before.
Yes,
Have you obtained search warrants for homes?
yes, many times.
Good
Is there a
afternoon,
certain
Barbie.
requirement before you obtain a search warrant for a home?
Yes, critical legal standards, yes.
And what is that?
Probable cause.
And
Right,
for
Parker?
us, what does that mean, probable cause?
So probable cause is a reasonable belief that a crime has been committed or evidence of a crime can be found in a specific location.
Can you obtain a search warrant if you do not have a reasonable belief that evidence exists somewhere?
No, you cannot.
Is there a process in getting a
So a half broken glass wasn't, for the love of God, you know, I'm not even going to bother anymore.
search warrant? You just walk in a home and say, I have a search warrant, or do you have to do something?
You have to write an affidavit in good faith, swearing before the court that all your information is accurate and truthful, and present the facts, circumstances, witness statements that would make you believe that there was a reason to violate your Fourth Amendment constitutional right.
When you walked into Fairview that morning with Sergeant Lang, did you have a search warrant?
No, I did not.
Did you have any reason to get a search warrant?
No reason at all.
When you walked in,
I
were
don't
you
get it
invited?
either, Nella.
Yes,
Did anybody prevent you from coming in?
no, not
Did
at all.
anybody ever ask you to leave?
No, not at all.
When you spoke to Mr. Albert, did he ever discontinue or end the conversation?
No.
One second, guys. Hey, Aaron. She can't believe that this is still in court, too. She doesn't know how it was thrown out either.
Were you doing any favors for anybody that morning?
No, of course not.
If you had probable cause to search anywhere that morning, would you have?
Absolutely.
You were asked questions about memorializing your efforts when you were in the area of Mr. O'Keefe's body. And you were asked about written reports. Are there other ways to memorialize efforts other than writing a report?
Please
Yes.
don't say memory.
You videotaped, or you had Sergeant Good videotape your search.
That is correct.
Who told him to do that?
I did.
Why did you tell him to do that?
Because I want it, in case it ever became an issue, I wasn't familiar with it being used before. I wanted people to understand how effective it was.
Do you know?
That's debatable. You're using a leaf blower on snow that's packed into the ground that didn't do anything to move it, and you want to show how beneficial that was as part of your search?
Whether or not the police cars have dash cams?
Thank you for
They
the
do,
follow.
yes.
Do you know if any of the police cars had dash cams that day?
3 of them did, yes.
I know. This
You
is how they
mentioned that
train.
At some point, you learned
Evidence
that
are one in
Mr.
Canton.
O'Keefe had passed.
I'm not sure when we found that out, but yes.
Is there a statute or a rule when there is a death, whether a local county keeps the case or it needs to be transferred?
It's transferred, yes.
Is there a rule or is that a policy of the Canton Police Department?
It's a rule.
You were asked about Alexis and the Sally Port.
Correct.
Do you know exactly what time that Alexis was brought to the Sally Port?
Those of us that watch some, behavior analysis type stuff, that's usually when you do that, that's what Chris Watts did too. They're trying to hold extra information in that they don't want to give out,
I don't have any personal
in my
knowledge of that.
opinion.
You asked about a broken taillight. Have or had you reviewed any of the dash cams from the Canton Police Department that day?
Not that day, no.
you were asked about cross-contamination with the cups. When you brought the cup
He's still
to the
doing it.
criminalist, where did you give them to him or her?
I carried them down to, we walked together, I carried them down to the Sally Port.
Did you see anybody using a white rag or a paper towel to dip it in to any of the cups?
No,
Did you see anybody shaking the cups or splashing?
no, they were handled very carefully.
Hold the hell on. They were handled very carefully. When you took the red Solo cups, collected the DNA, and put it inside the Stop and Shop bag that you did not seal, that you put on the floor. Yeah, this is all protocol. This is how it's supposed to be done, folks. That's sarcasm.
Did you see anything that would cause you concern that there was some type of purposeful or inadvertent contamination or transfer?
Absolutely not.
You've been trained.
Yes.
Did you see anything during that time that caused you any concern about the potential corruption of evidence?
No, I had complete faith in the criminalists.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
Very.
Blocks are identified.
That's how you keep a scene.
That into evidence.
He would have been better off if he used the damn hair dryer.
I'll do it later in that breaks.
Is there any objections to, Mr. Jackson, any objection to? Okay.
Right, exactly. Thank you, Barbie.
All right, so we can put it in at any time then? And then when Mr. McDermott comes back?
Thank you. The glass that you showed the jury yesterday, when you
A
showed
little
it to us
broken.
yesterday, did it look any differently than when you recovered it from the ground where you were looking that morning?
No,
Did you have any information that that glass came from inside Fairview Road?
no,
Do you know where that glass came from?
I have no personal knowledge where that glass came.
And you want to know why you don't have the knowledge? Because you never looked. You never looked.
From.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Very briefly, Your Honor, you indicated.
I'm not going to lie, when I like this, I'm like, why does my face feel like that?
Spitballing. To use your word, correct?
Thank you,
Correct.
Trying to
Doreen.
figure out what happened.
Correct.
That's the job of an investigator, correct?
That is correct.
You
Yes,
don't
sir.
just take witnesses' words for things, do you?
That is correct.
You have to corroborate things.
Yes.
You have to look deeper,
Yes.
ask more questions,
Absolutely.
actually investigate.
That's why we're here today.
It was found in the snow.
You don't rule out anything or anyone
We
right
didn't-
off the bat, correct?
Correct.
It was about this much of the bottom of a broken glass that he found when he used the leaf blower on the snow. It was underneath that snow. Part of it, like this much of it. And it was like this wide. But honestly, I don't know. The only things we saw were the pink blood. I cannot say that word, concoagulated or whatever word. The blood when it freezes and, yeah, that. No, they said that they used it that same day. Am I missing something with the leaf blower?
No one is ruled out. Nothing is ruled out,
That is
correct?
correct.
You
Yes.
follow where the evidence leads you, period, amen.
Absolutely.
You didn't seek, to separate the occupants at 34 Fairview, correct?
No,
You didn't interview Brian Albert formally, did you?
I did not know.
You were asked by Mr. Brennan, did he ever end the conversation precipitously? Did he end it early or anything like that? He didn't end any interview because he wasn't interviewed, correct?
That is correct.
You didn't interview Brian Higgins.
That is correct.
You wouldn't interview Brian Higgins because he's your personal friend, correct?
Correct.
But you didn't have anybody else interview him either, did you?
Again, I,
Did you hear what they just caught? Oh my god, he actually. Good job, AJ.
Glass came
Listen.
from inside Fairview Road.
no,
Do you know where that glass came from?
I have no personal knowledge where that glass came from.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Listen.
You indicated indicated that you were spitballing, to use your word, correct?
Correct,
Trying to figure out what happened.
correct.
That's the job of an investigator, correct?
That is correct,
You
yes,
don't
sir.
just take witnesses' words for things, do you?
That is correct.
You have to corroborate things.
Yes,
You have to look deeper,
yes,
ask more questions,
absolutely.
actually investigate.
That's why we're here today.
You don't rule out anything or anyone
We
right
didn't-
off the bat, correct?
Correct.
No one is ruled out. Nothing is ruled out,
That is
correct?
correct,
You
yes,
follow where the evidence leads you, period, amen.
absolutely.
You didn't seek to separate the occupants at 34 Fairview, correct?
No,
You didn't interview Brian Albert formally, did you?
I did not, no.
You were asked by Mr. Brennan, did he ever end the conversation precipitously? Did he end it early or anything like that? He didn't end any interview because he wasn't interviewed, correct?
That is correct.
You didn't interview Brian Higgins.
That is correct.
You wouldn't interview Brian Higgins because he's your personal friend, correct?
Correct.
But you didn't have anybody else interview him either, did you?
Did you catch that this time? You didn't interview Brian Higgins because he's your close personal friend. That's right. Your husband is on point today, Catnip. How many sister wives do we have in the room today? I haven't seen showers.
Again, we're talking, I think we've gone over this and maybe you didn't understand. I didn't know Brian Higgins was at the house at that time.
Then why did you just answer yes? That's why I didn't interview him.
Because you didn't ask anybody else who was at the house at that time.
I wasn't talking to anybody at that house, correct?
Might have been a good idea,
Happy.
wouldn't it?
Not at that time. We were there for one specific reason. We wanted to get to the hospital. So no.
Might have been a
I
good
disagree.
idea to sit Mr. Albert down and say, there, you're shaking your head again. I'm not done with my question. Might have been a good idea, Mr. Gallagher, since you happen to be there, no sweat off your brow, to sit Mr. Albert down and say, by the way, I got a pen and a paper. Who was here last night, just before John O'Keefe was found dead on your lawn? Who was here? Might have been a good idea, correct?
So that was already done by Detective Sergeant Lang, and it was documented in his report of everybody of what Mr. Jackson is asking.
Then how did you two not know that Brian Higgins was there?
I don't know where. I'm confused. At what time?
Right.
At what time?
Exactly.
At what time?
The fuck is going on?
When John O'Keefe arrived
Okay.
at 34 Fairview after midnight on January 29th, 2022.
So when I discovered Brian Higgins was there, wasn't until I read the report.
And you were standing in the house, Sergeant Lang, you just told these jurors knew that Brian Higgins and everybody else was there.
He had obtained the names. He hadn't written the report yet.
And hadn't told his boss,
I don't recall.
even though you two went together to interview yet another witness?
That's correct. There was a very fast-moving scene and pace. That is correct.
While you were spitballing, you also didn't secure the camera footage that we've talked about, the Arlo footage.
Yes, that's correct.
You also didn't formally search the house, correct?
Absolutely
We
correct.
just talked about that. You didn't seek consent by Brian, by Brian Albert to search the house, correct?
That's correct.
You also didn't seek a search warrant. You talked about that, correct?
Correct.
For the love of God, somebody remind me to make a mic drop sticker.
You don't get punished or in trouble if you seek a search warrant and a judge who has to sign the search warrant.
No.
Normal citizens can't do that. It requires a judge's signature. You don't get in trouble or get spanked or get slapped or get fined if you seek a search warrant that is denied, correct?
In this particular situation, I would need to articulate facts, certain circumstances, and witness statements. What I had was nobody could put John O'Keefe in the house, including Miss Reed, and that we had a glass where they were coming from a bar, and I had 3 separate police officers, including myself, that had been in that house on 3 separate occasions and saw nothing amiss. I have a good faith obligation.
Sir, did you notice that there is anything amiss outside other than the man on the snow? Probable cause? Hi, Arctic Fox. How are you? This
to
is
present
unbelievable.
the truth to a judge. And if I don't, I can be found, end up on a Brady list or a Giglio list, as you know. And my credibility to testify in my career is basically over. So yes, you can get in trouble.
You're talking about lying in an affidavit, sir.
I'm talking about misleading.
Correct.
I would have to twist circumstances to have the right to search Brian Albert's house. We had no reason, and there's been no reason since.
How about this? There's a dead guy on the lawn that looked like it potentially could have been a physical altercation. How about that? Might that be of some concern to go inside the house and see if there was a struggle started in the house?
There's still no evidence to go into the house.
You're the guy that's out on the lawn with no coat on.
You mean to tell me that having a dead body on the front lawn doesn't give you a reason to check the house? How about finding a broken glass on the front lawn that people should not be walking around in the middle of a blizzard holding?
You think the cook might be inside the house? That might be a reasonable assumption? Yes or no?
No.
I'll let you do it. You could tell him.
You think the shoe might be inside the house? That might be a reasonable assumption?
I never saw Mr. O'Keefe. I wasn't aware that
Because you
he
didn't
have his shoes.
seek to find out the details. Other people knew every single fact that I just suggested at the time you walked in the house, correct?
Objection.
Sustained.
You really gonna sustain that, Bev?
The fact is, you didn't seek a search warrant.
I wouldn't. Correct.
The fact is, you never searched the house.
That's correct.
The fact is, you never searched the basement.
That's correct.
The fact is, you never searched the garage.
That's correct.
Please throw this case
That's
out.
all I have.
Have you ever learned one fact that would have justified searching that house?
Not to this day.
Sustained is to vote, and you can put the glass in right now, Mr. Warren.
Thank you. Move that into evidence, please.
What are you moving in
All
evidence?
set, sir.
Thank you.
Your next witness, Mr. Brennan?
Good morning.
Wait,
You've
clip
missed
18, please.
an explosive first. I don't even know what you call that even anymore. I lost brain cells again watching him testify for reasons he didn't do what he didn't do. I mean, at this point, yeah, because the way that they collect evidence in Canton is with this right here, and that's evidence 101.
May we approach?
Monica, there's no way. It can't. This should have been already thrown out like 15 different times, and we're supposed to sit through 6 weeks? Bless you.
Thank you. Will do.
Can you, bring in a couple cans of Mountain Dew? Do you want this?
Huh? What did you
A couple cans of Mountain Dew?
put in the fridge? Yeah.
Or traded?
I gotta get going.
How in the hell? Are we being punked again, you guys? Are we being punked? Like they're about to come out and say, psych, this didn't just happen. We were just seeing if you were paying attention. Who's Ashton? I know I normally fast forward through sidebars, but I'm still trying to figure out if we're being punked. Okay, that sidebar turned into a long sidebar. That turned into... sweet cheese and crackers. I start between 11 and 12. We go over the headlines and then we go into Karen Reed closer to 12.
Love you. I'll see you afterward.
Love you too. Is the ice machine on?
Yeah, as far as I know. Come on. I need to get going.
Okay.
Already past 1 o'clock.
You gave them their things.
Now I want to see us.
She's been very vocal. She does not understand why Karen Reed is on trial for this.
Yeah, I don't know.
Thank you, Connie. Thank you, Glam.
I don't know either.
Parker said, have a good day.
Alright. Love you.
Love you too. He just came back and waved, but you can't see it because it doesn't show the kitchen. She only gets like that, Kathy, when she wants her TRATs. And she wanted them, and she couldn't believe that this wasn't thrown out. About time, damn.
Let's bring them in, please.
Good afternoon. We got new stickers, Connie. Thank you. Guys, while we're watching, if you have a free hand and you could tap this part of the screen where my face is in this box, it would be greatly appreciated. That way we could all just take turns and we don't have to all tap at the same time. We could just take turns. One person does it, then, you know, so on and so forth. Why can't you see the chat? Try exiting and coming back in. And what? Oh, I'm just going to ignore that. Thank you for the follow.
Do you need another one, Kristen? Do you need one?
What is going on here? And this turns into us staring at the fan again. If she has that, she won't be able to read that, Kathy. If she muted that, she swiped it away, she won't be able to read that.
We're back in session at 8.
I would have done the same thing, trust me.
All right, Mr. Brennan.
Thank you.
I do the same thing, it's okay.
The Commonwealth moves into evidence and asks to play clip 18.
Okay.
So when John got out of the car at Brian Albert's house, he took my full vodka soda, which is sitting in the cup holder.
Thank you.
Comment?
That.
Thank you.
All right, your next witness.
One more, please, Your Honor. The Commonwealth moves into evidence and seeks to play
How
clip number
rude.
17, please.
Okay.
That is so rude. The audacity.
I gave an interview with ABC with Matt Gutman. I think this was whom I gave the interview to, and I said, he asked why was I saying, could I hit him? Did I hit him? And I said, yeah, my first thought was, I've been out late, I've been drinking, and he's in the general vicinity of where I last saw him. And I mean, they talk about the left side of the property and the right as if it's, Hammersmith Farm. No one's
Not
coming
yet.
out of the house. Jen's telling me nobody's seen him. So I'm thinking, Jesus, was I starting to pull away and I ran over his foot? Like, he's roughly where I left him. So yeah, when I found him, I was thinking, did I like clip him somehow?
Once the witness gets up, I'm gonna get a drink because, yeah, I'm thirsty.
Okay.
Thank you.
So in order, it has 18 and then 17, or are they in the reverse order on the clip?
Oh, I'm just gonna go to my drink now because I'll be here all week at this rate.
All right, thank you. Your next witness, Mr. Lally.
Yes, Your Honor. Commonwealth Counsel, Robert Gilman. Thomas Smith, the evidence is before the jury, please know the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes.
Good morning.
I think Aaron forgot his lunch.
All right, Mr. Lally, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Could you please introduce yourself to the jury, stating your last name, spelling your last name for the court?
Good morning. My name is Robert Gilman, Gilman,
And what is your occupation, Mr. Gilman?
meteorologist,
And where did you go to school?
Northeastern University and the Pennsylvania State University, Penn State.
And what degrees did you receive from those institutions?
I received a Bachelor of Science
Are we just calling anybody now? Did they try to call the Pope too?
in Earth Science and in Meteorology.
Now, following your education, where did you first go to work?
I worked at the U.S. Geological Survey while I was finishing my education. I also worked at the Nuclear Regulatory Commission in Washington. I worked at AccuWeather
No
at
spoilers,
Penn
Kevin.
State. And then I started my own business when I came back to the Boston area,
We're gonna be here all week.
working both in media, writing a column for the Patriot Ledger, radio, 95.9 WATD, and also providing information to municipality.
That's why I said, did they try to call the Pope? Keyword. Hi, Regina. How are you?
It's about snow and ice and consulting.
Now, starting first with the U.S.
Or leaf
Nuclear
blower.
Regulatory Commission, what did you do there?
I worked in the Division of Site Safety and Earthquake Analysis. That was primarily involving siting nuclear power plants.
And as far as AccuWeather, Inc., what was it that you did there?
Meteorology, I worked starting out.
What about an earthquake? You're in there haven't what? I'm so confused.
Drawing maps. We drew our own maps back in those days, providing observations to meteorologists
Oh,
and
got you.
helping develop forecasts.
Now,
My head is like full of cotton from all this BS.
you had worked, you had mentioned earlier in your testimony, you'd worked as a meteorologist in New York,
Let's
for
hope
the
not.
radio, for the Patriot Ledger, and New England Weather Service, is that correct?
New England Weather Science, that's correct.
Okay,
And
don't
how
worry.
long a period
It'll
of
be
time span are we talking about as far as your work as a meteorologist?
Over 45 years.
Now, if you could explain to the jury just in general terms, what is meteorology?
Well, the term is actually a shortened term of hydrometeorology, one who studies
For the love of
falling
God.
water things. And it's a study of the atmosphere.
Now, in your work as a meteorologist, what are the different types of data that you study and examine?
We got a sticker for that
Mostly,
now, Kat.
Measured data such as temperature, humidity, wind, precipitation, but also sensing data with satellites that orbit the Earth and with radar that shoots electronic beams out and comes back and forms images that we can analyze.
Now, beyond the satellites and the radar, where does that other data come from?
Well, the observing stations generally are at airports, for instance, but they're also at utilities, and there are private networks. And these either automated or amateur weather observers take down data such as I just mentioned, temperature, precipitation, visibility.
This is a Metacube mask. I have them on my Amazon storefront. This is the Metacube Pink PDRI mask. It goes basically clear when it has been fully absorbed, 1 to 3 hours.
Ability at these different locations.
And what is your current occupation?
Meteorologist.
And where is it that you currently work?
I work for Precision Weather Forecasting Incorporated.
Wouldn't you think that I did with as much as I do them? But no, basically like every other day. I'm obsessed with masks. This helps to get your skin hydrated. It helps to return the youthful glow. This is the glow one. This is the big glow one, and it also helps with discoloration, so age spots.
And I also do work to assist requests for past weather data, both for clients of ours at Precision Weather Forecasting and other requests for weather data.
And is that a company that you started yourself in conjunction with other people?
Yes, thank you. It's a company that,
in my opinion, they're very therapeutic, so I would say.
we founded, my partner and I've been working with meteorologist Bill Guile for 30 years. We're both local, and we found that we had a lot of interest together. I don't stay up 24/7. He stays up overnight a lot of times, and we work much better on that shift kind of work during the day, answering questions of clients about snow and ice especially. So we formed our own corporation, a Massachusetts corporation, in 2016.
I think we all know that I'm not calm. I think it just helps me from all the busyness I need to do when I'm anxious.
And how long, even prior to the incorporation in 2016, how long have you been working in that capacity for the building that company?
Really?
Oh, I would say over 45 years, going back to 1979, 1980.
And what type of service does your company provide to your clients?
Precise snow and ice information. I own the website snowandice.com.
Are you self-promoting?
Clients depend on very local, precise snow and ice guidance. It's for safety. It's for efficiency, environmental concerns of not putting down a lot of chemicals when snow is going to change to rain, that kind of thing. So we're giving very local, precise weather information to help anyone that has snow and ice management concerns.
And if you could expound upon that just a little, sir, as far as what types of data or information is it that your company provides?
Mainly precipitation timing, when snowfall might begin in a particular place, the intensity of the snow, whether it might be expected to change to ice or rain or go back to snow or ice to help with those kinds of operations.
And where does that data or information come from?
As meteorologists, we develop it ourselves. It's all in-house. We take a variety of different data from numerical modeling, guidance products, and observational information and develop the forecast specifically for the client.
And as far as your clientele is concerned, To whom are you providing this data or information?
We work for most of the towns and the city in Norfolk County. We work for the largest cities in Massachusetts, some of the largest colleges and universities and other facilities, hospitals.
And what is the purpose of you providing that information to the clientele to whom you give it to?
Again, safety, efficiency, environmental concerns, to give them the best information to do the job they need to do. And it's a difficult job, as you can imagine.
Now, at some point, sir, were you asked to look at some data related to the Canton, Massachusetts area in the time frame leading up to and including January 29th, 2022?
Yes.
And what were you
No, Emma, we start every day late so we can fast forward through all the breaks.
asked to do?
I was asked to provide a simple report of the days preceding
You're welcome. We lack patience here.
January 29th, 2022, and a more detailed report of the early morning hours of January 29th about estimating snowfall during that time period.
And in total, as far as that total time frame, do you recall what dates you were looking at?
I believe it was January 26th to the
Kathy?
29th.
And during that time frame, was there a significant storm forecast for that time period?
Oh, yes.
What I can't clearly answer that one way or another because they were on a sidebar and they went away for a while, but she hasn't announced a lunch break, but the jury was out of the room. I don't know if that was their lunch break or not.
And what was the forecast for?
Well, the forecast for the first couple of days
Second witness.
was dry and very cold to bitterly cold. As we got closer to the 28th and 29th, we were looking at a storm coming in from the west and strengthening along the mid-Atlantic coastline. And we issued warnings, again, 2 to 3 days ahead of time to let our clients know that this was going to be a significant winter storm.
And specifically with the storm, what was the timing associated with that forecast as far as when would the storm begin?
We expected the storm, the snowfall, and the increase in wind to begin very late Friday evening, the 28th, with light to very light snow, and then to increase in intensity, especially later in the morning and through the late morning and midday of the 29th.
Now, from a scientific perspective, what is a blizzard?
A blizzard technically requires a great reduction in visibility. It doesn't even have to be snowing, either falling or blowing snow, visibility a quarter mile or less, with winds of 35 miles an hour, either sustained or frequent gusts for 3 hours or more.
Now, did this particular storm meet that criteria?
The storm did, absolutely. For Boston and much of the greater Boston area, including in Canton at the Blue Hill Observatory. However, not every spot had all of those criteria during the entire time period that the snow was falling.
Now, how significant a storm actually occurred, not taking away from your forecast, but actually occurred during that time frame?
This was the biggest January storm in history, with 27 inches of snowfall. And it snowed heavily for several hours, visibility under a quarter of a mile. And the temperature was dropping during that time, and the winds were gusting frequently to 40 and 50 miles an hour in this area.
Now, that data that you looked at from that time frame of January 26th through the 29th of 2022, what types of data specifically did you look, or actually, we'll get to specifics in a moment. What data in general terms did you look at in your analysis?
3 locations, the Blue Hill Observatory, which is the oldest continuously operating weather observatory in North America.
It's obvious that he really loves his job. It really is. Thank you,
Close by.
Alyssa. How are you?
Boston, which is a first order weather station at Logan Airport, and Norwood Airport, which is a mile away. And those were the three locations. I was considering the surface observations from those locations.
Sure is.
Also considered other types of observational data. I mentioned the
Or
radar
snowballs.
data. So the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration maintains a NEXRAD NOAA database. And third was the National Operational Hydrologic Remote Sensing Center, which categorizes snowfall and snow depth. So those three different types of data at those three different locations.
Now,
Thank you for the follow.
when you talk about the Blue Hills Observatory being the oldest in the country, how old is it?
It was established by Abbott Roch,
Kathy, add the IMO after that for me, please.
who left his family home at 5 Commonwealth Avenue in Boston and built this really strange little structure at the top of Great Blue Hill on February 1st of 1885.
And do you know how far away from 34 Fairview Road that Blue Hills Observatory is?
Yes, I do. If you don't mind me consulting my note for a moment.
Thank
So
you.
what are you reading, Mr. Gilman?
I'm reading notes I took on measurements from Blue Hill to Fairview. And that's, may I answer the question?
Angela, I think I'm sort of disassociating at this point too.
Yes, yes, you do. Yes, that's why I asked him what he's reading.
Thank you, Your Honor.
That would be 7 miles.
And the Norwood Airport, how far again is that, or how far away again is that between Norwood Airport and 34 Fairview Road?
1 mile.
Now, these measurements that you used in your analysis, are you familiar with how those measurements are taken or how they're done at each of those three locations?
Yes.
And can you explain to the jury sort of how those measurements are done or how those calculations or the data is collected?
Sure. Boston, again, is a first order station. It's equipped with automated equipment. It's called ASOS, Automated Surface Observing System. And it takes measurements of temperature, visibility, wind, humidity at very frequent intervals throughout the 24-hour day. It also collects precipitation, which isn't easy if you think of Logan Airport being out in the harbor and trying to collect every raindrop in that environment. But they have a very sophisticated rain gauge system that actually does a fairly good job of collecting precipitation. Moving on to Norwood Airport, very similar. It's not as high a caliber a station as Boston is in terms of the frequency of observations or the complete set of data. Blue Hill Observatory is a special case indeed. It had been manned for most of the day for many years. The former observer is still alive and well in Hingham, Bob Skilling. For the last several years, 10, 15 years or so, it was an ASOS system that I just mentioned, but in recent years that was cut back.
Thank you
So
for the
there are
follow.
observers that are there and they take observations when they're there, and they take automated observations otherwise and take a record of that. But it's not on the, for instance, the
It still counts, it just doesn't track it for my side, it tracks it for that side.
FAA network, Federal Aviation Administration. Weather data, of course, is extremely critical to aviation, and they have a network of weather data. The Blue Hill Observatory.
And also, guys, if you're new here and you're just following the backup, because that's where the images are, the video, that's only my backup. It doesn't come with me every time I'm live, so make sure you follow me on this side.
It currently is not on that network.
Now, how the data is collected or calculated at each of those respective facilities, is that how it's standardly collected within the industry?
Yes.
And is it routine both in your practice
No.
and in your meteorological industry
Thank
as a
you,
whole,
Angela.
relying on that type of data and the way it's collected?
Yes, there are standards established. I'm a member of the American Meteorological Society, the Professional Society of
Thank you.
Meteorologists, and there are standards that are established on
Hank,
taking
come
weather
on now.
measurements.
Now,
Thank you.
may I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
Yeah, I totally get it. I'm just the person that I'm like, give me patience, but please hurry. I'm that kind of person. One of you guys had said it a better way the other day. What was it?
Sure.
Mr. Gilman handed you a series of, I believe, about 6-page documents. You recognize that?
Patience by. What was that word? One of y'all had come up with it just yesterday.
Yes,
Back a little bit more.
Patience with parameters, I believe it was. And I think it was possibly Glam that said it. Patience with parameters.
Procedures, procedural histories.
You recognize that, sir?
yes, I
Oh,
do.
I could do that.
This is
Such an
a
airhead.
local climatological data sheet for January 2022 for each day. And I believe there's, as I look through it, hourly reports of weather observations, especially for January 29th at Norwood Airport. This is published by the U.S. Department of Commerce, NOAA, the National Environmental Satellite Data and Information Service.
At least as part of that data that you were testifying about before, as far as the data.
I did. I sped it up. I'm wondering if we're gonna get an aha moment. We have with basically every other witness, but I don't know if we do here. I will get it.
It's one element, that's right. Again, I put a lot of strength to this data because it is in such proximity to Canton, to the location we're concerned about.
I'll call this evening to the next exhibit. No objection, Your Honor.
Okay.
Before submission, may I return what's now marked as Exhibit 60 for the witness?
Yes.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Gilman, starting with snow accumulation, during the period that you were looking at, what is it that you found?
The snow began to accumulate during this winter storm. And by the way, I think I can use the term nor'easter, blizzard, bombogenesis, bomb cyclone, winter storm, all referring to the storm event of the 28th, mostly the 29th. The first snowfall began late in the evening on the 28th and continued into the 29th.
Just starting with that snapshot of the evening of the 28th, how much snow accumulated on the 28th before turning the page to the 29th?
Very little, enough to track a cat, 0.2 of an inch.
Thank you, Cora.
Now,
Welcome
with
to the
reference
team.
to the 29th, were you able to determine from that data sort of the hourly snowfall as it came down?
Yes, as the hourly precipitation data, temperature, and other information was reported, I was able to analyze it
But not a dog.
each step of the way as the storm progressed.
And from your analysis, sir, could you describe to the jury, sort of going bit by bit, what was that hourly snowfall for the 29th?
As I said in the report, it's estimated that as it began, it was on the order of 0.3 of an inch an hour on the 29th until 1 o'clock. And it stayed in that light range. And anything under an inch an hour of accumulation is termed light snowfall. So that by 3 and 4 a.m., we were looking at 3, 4, 5/10 of an inch an hour. There started to be an increase more noticeable in the intensity by 5 a.m. with another inch, and then by 6 a.m. with another 1.2 inches.
If I could stop you there just for one moment, Mr. Gilman. So from the time period from when the storm began on the 28th to the time period of 6 a.m. on the 29th, how much in total snowfall had accumulated at that point?
Thank you for subscribing, Angela. Welcome to the family. You now get to use all those really cool badass stickers.
I believe that was, through my arithmetic,
It's next to the emoji. It's the star symbol when you comment.
3.9 inches up to 6 a.m.
And I'm sorry, sir, if you could continue now going forward from 6 a.m. on the 29th.
Then we started getting into a more moderate snowfall, and again, that's an inch an hour more. So that by 7 o'clock it was another 1.5 inches. By 8 o'clock, another
No, it's not.
inch 0.1.
We start late every day to skip through all the breaks. We're impatient people.
And then by 9 and 10 o'clock, it was getting to be moderate to heavy snowfall based on radar returns and X-ray radar information, based on the visibility reduction, based on the amount of precipitation that was melted in the rain gauges, based on other reports from cooperative observers. So that's on the order of 1.5 inches an hour of intensity. And that continued through the middle of the day, rapidly accumulating on the ground. And it accumulated at even 2 inches an hour by the early afternoon before it started to wind down in intensity, as these types of storms always do. By 7 or 8 o'clock in the evening, it was back down to light snowfall, 1/2 inch to 2/10 of an inch. And the snowfall accumulation had ended by 10 o'clock at night.
Does anybody else see the little IMO bubbles popping up behind his head when he's saying all this? Because I do.
If I could take you back just a little bit to right before it turns from the moderate 1.5 inches per hour to about the lighter snow. Well, how much snow had accumulated at that point? Around 6 p.m. or so?
Around 6 p.m.?
Yes.
Well, again, I'm just going to do the arithmetic of subtracting the snowfall after 6 p.m., which was 1.3 inches from the total, which was 23.8. Do that arithmetic.
Which part, Kathy?
23.8 was the total snowfall, and 1.3, 22.5 inches.
So that's 22.5 inches, just short of 22. Excuse me. Just short of 22.5 inches by 6 p.m. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And what was the total snow accumulation from the storm in its entirety again?
23.8 inches.
So just short of 2 feet. Is that correct?
That's correct. Biggest snowstorm in January in our history.
Now, sir, have you prepared some visual aids to assist the jury with the snow accumulation?
Yes.
May I approach the witness again, Your Honor?
Yes.
Snowman, that might be a good card today. I'm gonna steal that one.
Gentlemen, showing you 3 documents.
Hi, Crystal. How are you? Showers is here.
And what do you recognize?
We've been looking for you all day, and by all day I mean for 2 hours.
The first one is a storm warning report that was sent to our clients in this area regarding the upcoming snowfall, winter storm. And we began sending this type of report, as I said, 3 days prior. This was one of the last ones that was sent as the storm was getting underway in this area. So this was sent by my colleague, my partner, Bill Guile, at 8 o'clock that Friday evening. And it's a detail of when the snow is going to start, when the first inch will be on the ground, the total snowfall, the duration of the storm, and what's going to happen after the storm, which is all.
They just diagnosed you with fibro. Are they trying to make you like me? Tell them polite pass, no thank you.
Also critical for our clients to know how to clean it up and what kind of post-storm conditions as far as temperature and other things to consider. So that's the heading of the form. Then we get into this detailed 6-hour time block series. And of course that begins at 6 p.m. to midnight since this was issued at 8 p.m. And we talk about the weather conditions and how much, if any, snowfall.
I don't mean to interject. But just
I'm so sorry, sweetie.
That is a forecast that you sent out, correct?
Yes. Our company sent out. My partner, Bill Guile, actually sent it.
And the last 2 sheets that you have before you, what are those?
These are images taken from one of those 3 sets I talked about.
This man loves his job. You could just tell.
The data
Right.
set from NOAA, the National Operational Hydrologic Remote Sensing Center. And it's an image of snow depth or snow on the ground at 2 times on January 29th. The first time is 1 a.m. and the second time is 7 a.m. It's a map of Greater Boston down to the South Shore into northwestern Rhode Island.
Thank you for telling us that, Car. Definitely will. Thank you.
Yes.
Oh, we hit 50K. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate it. Thanks for telling me, Peachy. Let's see if this mask is almost done yet. This doesn't touch the skin, so that's why this isn't absorbed.
Great.
The line where it overlaps is not absorbed.
Yes.
Thank you.
It's done.
Now, Mr. Gilman, what is the difference between a forecast versus a report of actual conditions or weather measurables?
As defined, a forecast is your best estimate based on science and data available of how the future is going to play out in terms of weather, the amount of snowfall, the temperature, the observed data. And I often make the distinction between soup and sandwich. Weather and forecast always seem to go together, but there actually is weather, and that's separate from what the forecast is, and there's always some small distinction. Lately, we've been getting pretty good at getting accurate weather forecasting done, but it is the actual weather that's measured. How much snow is on the ground, how much snow fell, what the wind speed was during any given period, temperature, those kind of.
Don't forget when you take off this mask to use all the serum that's in the package. This is some good serum. You gotta use
that
it.
actually occurred.
Waste not.
Your Honor, with court's permission, may I publish to the jury on the screen a copy of the forecasting document?
Okay.
Ms. Gilman, if you could. And Mr. Gilman, what's up on the screen? Is that what you have before you as the forecasting document that's now been marked as an exhibit?
Yes.
And if you could, directing the jury's attention from left to right as far as the columns go, if you could walk the jury through sort of what we're looking at in this particular area.
Sure. So below the heading, I think I defined the heading just before, we have these 6-hour time periods. So the columns are the day, in this case, today being Friday in this forecast, the weather, the amount in inches, that would be of snowfall, the temperature, that's the air temperature, and air temperature is taken 5 feet above the ground in a natural surrounding. The road temperature, also in Fahrenheit, and that is the
Definitely
surface
get all you pay
ground
for.
temperature, which is very important to our clients. And then we have wind, both sustained and gusts. Below that, we have special notes to amplify our message. A lot of times people don't read everything, so we try to highlight what's important or add something that wouldn't be in one of those columns.
As far as the air temperature is concerned, as far as it being recorded, does that incorporate wind chill into that temperature, or is that something else?
Wind chill is a calculated amount or figure of heat transfer based on how human beings react to temperature. So this is the actual temperature that would be measured on a thermometer.
Okay, thank you. And Ms. Gilman, if you could scroll down. And again, on the bottom portion of this aid, again, if you could walk the jury through what we're looking for, what we're looking at, and specifically, if you could draw their attention to the snow accumulation that's forecast in this.
Certainly. The same applies to the columns. Now we're into the tomorrow. So since this was issued at 8 p.m.
I'm not a professional in meteorology, but my understanding is they'd have little containers outside where they have like their home base operate. I cannot remember what it's called. Clearly, this isn't my field. They have little measurements that gather the snow as it comes down.
p.m. on Friday. Tomorrow is Saturday. And we're going through each 6-hour period and how much snowfall could be expected. You see it starts with 3 or 4 inches and then ramps up as we get later in the morning to as much as 6 to 10 inches of snow. And you can calculate what that hourly rate might be based on the 6-hour period.
Babe, did you forget your lunch? I love you too. Have a good night, but I think you forgot your lunch, sir.
We give that type of range because it's scientifically accurate. People really want to know every minute, every hour, and that's just not something that modern science can do. So we give this period to be as accurate as possible while still being extremely precise.
Okay.
7 to 9 inches during the afternoon period, and then it winds down to 2 to 3 inches toward midnight.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Gilman, you can take that down. Now, Mr. Gilman, the snow accumulation, how is that measured as far as the measurements that you get from each of these 3 sites? How is that measured at those sites?
At Blue Hill Observatory, there's often an observer, a trained observer, making measurements. The standard is to use what we call a snowboard. And if any of the members of the jury do weather observing or no weather observers, you might be familiar. It's just like a piece of plywood, something that doesn't radiate like pavement would or a house would. just something that would allow the snowfall to accumulate in a natural way, and then that's cleaned off every 3 hours, and those amounts are added throughout.
See? I didn't even need to tell you that part. He was going to tell us. I just need to sit back and be quiet.
The duration of the snowfall event. So that's the way the observers at the Blue Hill Observatory literally been doing that since 1885. When you come to Logan Airport, you don't have an observer right there. There was back before the 70s, 80s, around that time period, before ASOS came into play. There were people that were in the weather office that would go out and make those measurements. Now they contract with an observer. And I'm not sure the location right now or during this event in 2022. I believe it may be in Winthrop, but it's very nearby to Logan Airport. And this is a contracted observer that makes these measurements.
But if you think about it, dude's been doing this for, what did he say, 40, 45 years? He deserves his pats on the back. I would take him too. He loves his job, you could tell.
At Norwood, there is no snowfall measurement made right at that location.
Now, you've used a term a couple times as far as heavy snow. What is, scientifically, what do you mean by heavy snow?
Heavy snow, again, can be defined in two ways. Either by the reduction in visibility or by the accumulation rate. So it's an intensity of snowfall. And in terms of visibility, it would be less than a quarter of a mile. So something like 3/8 of a mile. That's when you get into the heavy snowfall range. Intensity, in terms of the way it
This is Robert Gilman. He's a meteorologist.
accumulates might be more familiar to most of us. We don't know what that visibility might or might not be, but it's 1.5 inches an hour or more. It's not something that you want to be driving in, or very hazardous and big impact on a lot of our activity.
Now, what is the scientific definition of whiteout conditions?
I don't know if there's a scientific explanation, but it's a good term that is used quite a bit, and it would be heavy snowfall. Again, snowfall can reduce visibility to near zero, even below 3/8 of a mile. You may be getting 2 inches of accumulation, 3 inches per hour. When you have a very convective, energetic storm, like a thunder snow event, a lot of upward motion in the atmosphere, you could get 4, even 5 inches of snowfall per hour, and that certainly would be termed whiteout. I think it has a lot to do with the fact that we drive a lot these days, that people are familiar with limitations to being able to drive a car. And, if you're driving along, the wipers are going at maximum speed, and you just can't make out anything on
This is the prosecutor's witness, though.
the horizon or the car in front of you, you say, it's whiteout conditions. That's the way it's reported.
And did each of those, as far as heavy snow and whiteout conditions, occur in this storm?
Heavy snow definitely occurred in the storm. I've heard it referred to as whiteout conditions, and it's somewhat in the eye of the beholder, but I would say yes, whiteout conditions did occur.
Now, turning your attention, Mr. Gilman, now to the topic of visibility. Can you describe to the jury what your understanding of that term is as it applies to what you do?
Well, visibility is just a reduction of how far you can see based on some weather element.
I would be too, and I live in Illinois, and we get a lot of snow here too. Our snow is a lot different than what they describe a blizzard as, though.
As long as we're talking about weather. So haze can reduce visibility, fog, different types of precipitation, smoke can reduce visibility in the atmosphere. But in terms of snowfall, the heavier the intensity of the snowfall, the lower the visibility.
Keep in mind that Mr. Jackson gets to question him next, and I'm sure that's going to be one of his most prominent questions, is that whiteout, not seeing the body in the snow.
And so from a meteorological standpoint, how is that measured?
Well, it's measured in miles, or quarters of a mile, which is the standard here in the United States.
I hear you, Andy.
And you sometimes see it in 1/8 of a mile, but generally with these automated systems, it would be 3/4 of a mile or half a mile, or as the snow intensity lightened up quite a bit, you may go up to 7 miles. I've seen snow falling at 10, even 11 mile visibility, which you'd hardly notice if you were out. That's not much of a reduction in visibility, but it can come all the way down to near zero.
And what was the lowest, if you know, the lowest recorded measurement as far as visibility as it pertained to this one?
I would base that on the Norwood Airport because it was, especially in this immediate area, and they do a good job of measuring visibility, and that came down to 1/4 of a mile at the airport. It certainly may have been lower than that at times, but it was on the order of 1/4 to perhaps as low as 3/8.
Andy, do you mean you don't like their way of collecting evidence with Red Solo Cups? Stop and shave? What the hell? Stop and the bag and all that? I don't know what airport. I'm not gonna lie. I
A
distracted
mile, or an eighth
myself.
of a mile between observations.
And a leaf
Now,
blower.
sir, if I could turn your attention to the topic of temperature. How is temperature measured in your analysis as far as the data that you have?
Temperature is measured with a thermometer, and there are different types. We depend heavily on electronic thermometers now. It measures the amount of heat in the air, and we get a reading, and we generally use that reading as the air temperature.
Now, what is the difference between air temperature and road temperature?
Again, air temperature, the standard is the temperature of the atmosphere 5 feet above the ground in a well-ventilated natural surroundings. Road temperature or ground temperature is actually at the surface, so it's out beyond the atmosphere, right at the surface of the ground.
And what kind of tools are used or utilized to measure road temperature?
There are basically two ways. One way would be to put some kind of sensing device, a probe, in the surface, just below the surface. And the other way would be to use infrared radiation. So you'd mount a sensor on a pole, and that infrared wavelength measurement will give you a road temperature or surface temperature.
Now, you mentioned earlier in your testimony that road temperature in particular is important to your clients. Why is that?
And I've heard this so many times from our clients, you can forecast or expect an inch of snowfall or 3 inches of snowfall. If it's going to melt because the road temperature is 34 degrees or 35 degrees Fahrenheit, they don't really want to do anything. They don't want to put a lot of chemical down. They don't want to hire private contractors with plows. Whereas if it's going to accumulate, especially on the road surface, they need to be prepared. And there's so much demand now on having black pavement during winter storm events. There's so many automobiles on the roadways in this area.
But do you recommend leaf blowers to get the snow out?
That each of these municipalities is constantly under demand to make sure they do the best job they can. And in order to do that, they need to know what the road temperature is going to be or the ground temperature is going to be in order to best have snow and ice operations to meet those demands.
Now, is there a difference, or what is the difference in the changes in air temperature as opposed to the change in road temperature?
They're different substances, so they have a different pattern of temperature change. Air temperature changes much more quickly.
Thank you for
And
the
of course, we're talking
follow.
about temperature. We're talking about energy, the way the molecules in the atmosphere are moving. The faster they're moving, the higher the temperature, the more energy. So depending on what is causing that change in temperature, the atmosphere is going to react more slowly. The ground will react more slowly to the change. The atmosphere will react pretty quickly and much faster.
Now, in your analysis here, what time frame again were you using, or were you measuring the temperature across? Let me ask you this way. You started on January 26th through the 29th, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And why is it specifically with temperature that you started on the 26th as opposed to anything else?
I was asked to start at the 26th, and I said that's a good way to go because it establishes a period of seasonal
I believe that as well,
freezing
Kathy.
ground. It typically happens in this climate in the midwinter that our ground freezes. So if you look a few days before, you get a good sense if that was the case. I mean, there have been winters, there have been months of January in recent years that we've reached 60, even 70 degrees, and nothing is going to be frozen during that time. This was not the case in late January 2022. It was an unusually cold period, and it was important to record that.
Now, can you describe to the jury or lay out for the jury the temperature readings throughout that period of time that you analyzed?
Yes. I'll start with the 26th and just go without going through more than just the day high and low. A high of 28, a low of 12. On the 27th, the high was 27 and the low was just 9 degrees Fahrenheit. On the 28th, Friday, the high temperature reached 36 and the low was 22. And then on Saturday, the 29th, the high temperature was 29, the low was down to 15.
You
Now, sir, if I
clearly
could
don't have the
ask
same
you
kind of
specifically within
blizzards
that
as
time
we
period,
do.
a specific time period of approximately 1:30 a.m. on the 29th through 5 a.m. on the 29th. What does the data demonstrate with respect to the air temperature during that period?
From 1:30 to 5:30
Yes, please.
on the 29th. All right, I'll consult this data from Norwood Airport if that's the way we should look at this. I would suggest to do that. And at 1:30, the temperature was 31. By 5:53 in the morning, it was down to 24 degrees.
During that time period, before that, is the temperature relatively stagnant during that time period of 1:30 to 5 a.m.?
Before that time?
During that time.
Oh, during the early part of the time. Again, this is right at
Wow.
Norwood Airport. It might have been a little bit colder. In Canton, it certainly was colder at the Blue Hill Observatory.
Since
But I don't
91.
have a lot of that, so I'm using this.
Sure.
So based
Thank
on this, it was pretty steady through around 2 in the morning. And then because of the nature of this type of storm, it's deepening rapidly. It's low pressure offshore. So the
added
wind
it.
tends to back from the northeast to the north-northeast to the north. And that backing wind starts to draw air rather than from the Gulf of Maine, the Atlantic Ocean, the harbor, more from northern New England and Quebec. So that's a tendency of all of these winter storms to tend to get colder as the storm intensifies. And that's what we see starting to happen as you get toward 2:30 in the morning, and especially 4:30, it's down to 28, 26, and then down to 24 degrees just before 6 in the morning.
And that temperature sort of fluctuation or lack thereof, is that consistent with what you would expect in this type of storm?
It's exactly what I would expect. And this is a classic winter nor'easter, and then that temperature drop is part of that.
And lastly, sir, if I could just take you back to the road temperature you were talking about before. How would you describe the temperature readings generally from the 26th through the 29th as far as what type of temperatures were recorded during that time frame that you just testified about?
As I said, it's the coldest time of the year anyway, in late January, here in the Boston area around Canton.
No, it's debatable.
Midwinter.
But
And this particular year, 2022, it was colder than normal. So road temperatures were dropping much of the time. They may have come up a little bit during the course of the day, thanks to sunshine during the 26th and 27th, a little moderation in the temperature on the 28th. But for the most part, there was a frost in the ground, the soil was frozen, and the temperature was unusually cold at the middle of winter.
And what impact would that have on hardness of the ground over that time period?
Well, again, the ground was frozen, the soil was frozen, and the surface of the ground was frozen. And it would have made the ground impenetrable, that hard, as hard as too difficult. You wouldn't be able to dig in the ground.
Thank you very much, sir. I have nothing
in
further.
other words, would you say use a leaf blower, sir? I'm not going to get over the leaf blower anytime soon.
Yes.
Norwood? Okay, thank you.
Show Mr. Lally, please.
With regard to Mr. Lally and myself, we have agreed I'd like to address the court with a stipulation, and with regard to the document we stipulated into evidence, text matters.
Let me slow it down.
Okay.
Sidebar. Fast sidebar, huh?
May I, Your Honor?
Yes.
Good afternoon, Mr. Gilman, and congratulations on your career up to this point.
Thank you.
Good
afternoon, almost.
Pardon me?
Good afternoon, almost.
I have some questions for you, if I could, please. You covered a bunch of topics on your direct examination, and I wanted to confirm some of them.
I can fast forward him though, right? He's not your guys' husband, so he's still the defense. But I might speed it up just a little bit.
As a meteorologist, you indicated that you look at a variety of areas under the larger umbrella of weather, correct?
Correct.
And one of those areas is snow accumulation.
Correct.
Another area is
I missed it
visibility,
too.
correct?
Correct.
Do you have a general understanding about what this case is about? Let me ask it this way. As regards weather conditions, are you familiar with an address of 34 Fairview Road in Canton, New York?
Yes.
And have you ever been to 34 Fairview, Canton, New York?
Not New York. This is
I'm
we're in
sorry,
Massachusetts.
I'm sorry, Massachusetts, sir.
Yes. I've been in many parts of Canton. I don't believe I've ever been to 34 Fairview.
Are you generally familiar with that area?
Yes.
And you've mentioned the Norwood Airport on your direct testimony, correct?
Yes.
And
Let's just face it. If I was on the stand, that's the kind of the mistake I would make.
is the general area of Fairview, is that in close proximity to the Norwood Airport?
I mentioned it's a mile away.
Right, so it's fairly close, right?
Mile.
Right, so you would expect that the readings you talked about on your direct examination would have a direct bearing and relevance to the 34 Fairview Road in Canton, is that correct?
Yes. Relevance, yes.
Ooh,
Yes.
Kathy.
So what I would like to do is to draw your attention to the exhibit that was just marked, if Your Honor. We have that. May I approach, please?
This is the defense's witness now, guys.
Mr.
Well, the
Gilman,
prosecution,
this is,
but their turn.
Exhibit 64. If I could hand that to you, please.
Thank you.
And you can keep that in front of
But
you.
who, Kathy? This isn't the prosecutor.
Your Honor, may I publish?
Yes.
Thank you. If you could enlarge, just, not the whole thing, just the chart up above, and make that as large as you could for the jury, please.
Oh, okay, thank you.
That is very good, thank you. You see where we are, and Mr. Goodman, you can either look on the screen or look on the document, whichever is best for you.
Let's see if they'll read it out. Hold on.
You're welcome. So let's start with the top, which is estimated hourly snowfall ending at. This is for January 29th, 2022, correct?
Yes.
And what does not appear on this chart, but I want to make sure I can get this as accurate as possible, would it be appropriate to, before 1 a.m., to add a 0.2 for what you mentioned on direct for midnight? You mentioned there was a little bit starting, and there was a 0.2. Is that correct? Did I hear that correct?
If you want to get the total for the snowfall event, yes.
Okay, so we'll just have, if you will, an imaginary 0.2 up at the top. And what I'm going to do, sir, is I'm going to go through the hourly snowfall, because there are times that you have on your chart that are relevant in this matter. So let's start with, and just do it chronologically by time. And what I'm going to ask you to do is to do a little bit of math as we go through. If you need a calculator, I think it's going to be fairly straightforward math for someone with your skills, but take your time when we get through it. So we start at midnight, and you mentioned the concept of visibility on your direct examination, correct?
Yes.
And I believe you said on your direct examination that at midnight there was, quote, very little snow precipitation. Is that correct?
I believe I said there was very little snow on the ground.
Very little snow on the ground, and I think you used the phrase track a cat?
Enough to track a cat, exactly.
Right.
But is it enough to track a dog? Say Chloe by chance?
So enough to track a cat, but a fairly small amount, correct?
I don't know how to define it any better than enough to track a cat.
Very good, sir. I'll go with track a cat.
That's the smallest amount as you can get. And again, that would be on a natural surface, not necessarily on pavement.
Right. And what would the variation be, if at all, on pavement?
Oh, a lot of factors would come into play. Most importantly, since this was a forecasted storm event, the town may have pre-treated the road. That lowers the freezing point of the precipitation. So it would, even if it was 25 degrees, it might be melting on the road.
Kathy, I don't see that with this witness. I don't see him purposefully. I don't see him being snarky on purpose. Not yet, anyways.
So in terms of the factor you just talked about, for example, pre-treatment, that could cause the accumulation, the numbers here to be lower than what we're seeing on the chart, correct?
Definitely, correct.
But there's not a scenario where it could be higher, is it, at this point?
Well, there are places, especially with this kind of wind and dry, fluffy snow, that you would have drifting.
Right, but with just 0.2 inches on the ground, would you expect drifting?
No,
Okay.
absolutely not.
Right.
Unless I was a very small animal.
I was going to say, tracking a cat wouldn't seem to work very well if you've only got drifting with 0.
I thought you were
That's why I said you could tell that he loves what he does for a living.
asking about the larger numbers.
No, sir, good point. What I'd like to do is to just concentrate on the beginning here and midnight and 1 a.m. and then we'll progress down through, okay? I want to snapshot it, if you will, starting at the very beginning. So
I just yawned so big that half of my spirit came out.
So we then move to
I agree with you.
1 a.m., which is 0.3 inches, correct?
Correct.
Now, if you add, and it seems like to be most accurate, to each number here, we would add a 0.2 to get the total, correct?
Correct.
So if we go to 1 a.m. on January 29, 2022, we've only got 0.5 inches of snow per this chart, correct?
Total so far, yes.
I'm not writing this part down in my notebook. I'm going to pull right past that.
And that could, on the road, that could be less because of municipal pre-treatment. If they pre-treated for the storm, they could have put some chemicals down
Salt?
that would have caused a melt and therefore less. That's a possibility.
That's one factor. Another factor would just be the road may be warmer for a number of reasons.
So that could be another reason why it might be less, another factor.
Absolutely.
Okay, so now let's go to, I want to go between 1 and 2 a.m. Let's assume a time of 1:45 a.m. on January 29, 2022. Is it correct that the accumulation would be less than 0.8 inches at that point, according to your chart?
By 2 a.m., it would be less than 0.8, yes.
Therefore, correct.
Therefore, by 1:45, it would be less than 0.8, yes.
Right, so.
Or equal to, if
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
less
sir.
than or equal to.
Right, so you used 2 a.m., right, which would mean that it was 0.8, correct?
Correct.
And then if you work back 15 minutes at 1:45 a.m., it would be less than 0.8, correct?
If it was still snowing in those 15 minutes.
Right. So, but I just want to focus on the number. At 1:45 a.m., it's less than 0.8 inches, correct?
It's less than 0.8 inches.
Yes, right. Alrighty. So, and that is, to state it another.
I have this opinion that they do these long, drawn out, circle back, re-asking. I believe it's just my own personal opinion that they do it this way to confuse the jury. Prosecution, they do it that way for that reason, in my personal opinion. But let's hope the defense is going somewhere that many of us can keep up with.
Other way, is it correct to say it's just
That's right, Monica. My opinion as well.
Is that correct?
0.8 is 0.8 of an inch.
Right. Another way to say it. So, in terms of the time now, and this may get a little more complicated, sir, but if you take just the time between 1 a.m. and 1 a.m. and 2 a.m. So you've got 0.8.
If I don't
You would
keep moving, I'm
have
gonna fall asleep too.
under at 1:45. Is it correct you would have only 0.35
Me too,
inches
Monica.
accumulated of the 0.8? You follow my math, sir?
I'm not sure what I follow in that sentence. Did you ask me how much snow fell between 1 a.m. and 2 a.m.?
That's another way of asking the
Okay,
question.
between 1 a.m.
And the sad part, Monica, is that it happened before they used that to collect their evidence. It's been falling apart for quite some time.
and 2 a.m., 0.3 of an inch is the estimated snowfall.
Right. Very well.
You're welcome.
And so what I'd like to do now is to move down the chart to 3 a.m. How much snow has fallen or accumulated between 12 a.m. and 3 a.m.?
It would be 1 inch.
Right. And is an inch, and you're in the measurement business, about the size of a thumbnail?
Yeah, I actually use the knuckle on my thumb to the end of my thumb as an inch.
Right. So from the knuckle of one's thumb to the end of the thumb is 1 inch. Right. And under your terminology on direct, you had used the term very little. Would you consider from the knuckle to the top of the thumb, very little snow?
It definitely would require a comparison. 1 inch of snow has caused tremendous problems for people.
Right.
So
But isn't there a possibility that your guys' thumb might be longer than my thumb and vice versa?
I would not call it, just by the fact of 1 inch of snowfall, I would never say it's very little.
No, so I'm sorry, maybe my question wasn't clear. I'm not talking about effects of 1 inch. I'm just talking a measurement of 1 inch. On a measurement scale, would you still consider that your phrase, track a cat, or would you be out of the track a cat?
We'd be out of the track of cat stage.
Got it. So, but again, the 1 inch being from the knuckle to the top of the thumb.
Yes.
Let's now go all the way down to about another time is 3:30 a.m., which we're going to focus on now. 3:30 a.m.
For
How much
point of
snow
reference.
had accumulated by 3:30 a.m.?
Well, we're going to have that inch we just talked about at length, and we're going to add the 2/10 from the previous day, the last few hours of the 28th. So we have 1.2. Now we're going to add another half an inch by 4 a.m. So somewhere less than 1.7 inches, less than or equal to.
Wouldn't the number at 3:30 be 0.85 inches?
You're including the snowfall from the previous day, the 2/10 of an inch?
Yes.
No.
What would it be?
As I said, there's 1.2 inches up to 3 a.m. And then we're adding some amount before 4 a.m. Unknown how that was distributed within that hour, but something like 1.7 equal or less than total.
How about the accumulation between 1 a.m. and 3 a.m.? How much accumulation for that time period?
Between 1 a.m. and 3 a.m. So we have 3/10 of an inch up to 2 and another 4/10 of an inch, or a total of 0.7.
So between 1 and 3 a.m., there's only an accumulation of 0.7, correct?
Correct.
Inches.
Correct.
You had
How many thumbs is that?
spoken a lot on your direct testimony about the magnitude of the storm, a variety of other measurements. But what I wanted to draw really a line at 6 a.m., which you said was an accumulation of 3.9. What I want to do is to now move on to from 7 a.m. on January 29th until noontime. And you can check my math, sir, but I get 12.5 inches total as of noon on January 29th.
I can do the arithmetic if it sounds about right. 8.6 inches fell up until noon, starting at 6 in that time period, which is about the amount we forecast. And did you ask about the total going back to the night before, or
Yeah, the total starting at midnight,
starting at midnight?
right, going until noon, so it's a 12-hour period of the same day, January 29th.
My quick calculation is 12.3 inches.
Right, and then you'd add the 0.2 from midnight.
Previous to midnight. Yes.
Right, so 12.3 is what shows with all those numbers, but then you have to add the 0.2 from midnight, which would get you to 12.5, correct?
Exactly. Yep.
Good. So
Thank you for the follow.
just to summarize the first column there, all the way down from 1 a.m. to 12 p.m. At 6 a.m., we've got 3.9 inches. And then moving down to 12 p.m., we're at 12.5 inches, correct?
I believe so.
In my opinion, yes. The math isn't mathing with the situation.
Sir, tell me when you're ready.
Yes, yes.
So we're in alignment with those two numbers, 3.9 inches as of 6 a.m., 12.5 inches as of 12 p.m.
Yes, you did, Kevin. There were several times that there was no snow on the ground at all.
On January 29th, correct?
Yes. Yeah, I'm sorry if I wasn't sure if you wanted me to do all the arithmetic again, but I did do that, yes.
Okay, good. Thank you. I appreciate you doing that. You talked about the concept of visibility on your direct examination. In terms of visibility, did I hear you correctly that there's a correlation between the amount of snow coming down in visibility?
The intensity of the snowfall, so the amount over time in visibility, right?
Right. So the intensity or amount over time. How would you describe visibility from 12 midnight or 12 a.m. on January 29th until 1 a.m., that 1 hour period? How would you describe visibility?
I really don't know exactly. I can look at the report from Norwood Airport. They measure the visibility.
Could you do that, sir? Would that be easy enough for you to do?
Do you need a light, Mr. Gilman? Do you need lights on?
If we're going to do more than one, I would, but I'll see if I can. Thank you, Your Honor.
Shower, those are the new stickers.
And we were asked about 1 a.m. Is that?
Yes, visibility at 1 a.m.
Okay. Visibility reported at 1 a.m. was 1.2 miles in light snow.
And what does that mean, a visibility of 1.2 miles?
1.25 miles, 1.25 miles. That means that anything that was more than 1.25 miles away from the observer would be hidden by the snowfall. You wouldn't be able to see it.
And what does it mean if the visibility was less than 1.25 miles?
And as the visibility lowers, your ability to see objects in the distance is reduced.
So assume, sir, that somebody is 30 feet away from an object they want to see, and the visibility is 1.25 miles. Would they be able to see that object based upon your experience with visibility and your career in that area?
All other things being equal, yes.
Right. So would it be
But wouldn't it matter the size of the object they're wanting to see?
fair to say visibility would be good from 30 feet if it's a 1.25 mile and beyond?
Can you answer that, Mr. Gilman?
That too,
Can
what
I
Jessica
further
said.
explain to the jury about visibility? Thank you. A term like good for visibility would generally apply more toward 8 miles, 10 miles is good visibility. So it's hard to say that anything under 3 miles. For instance, we go from calling visibility reduction in haze to fog once it's really the same atmospheric phenomenon, but once
It's a good thing I'm a comedian. I help break up all these boring moments, huh? I'm not really a comedian, that's a joke.
you get below 3 miles, we call it fog or dense fog. So anything below that, when you reduce visibility by fog, haze, snow below 3 miles, it's hard to call it good visibility.
But if something is at 1.25 miles, there's visibility, correct?
Of 1.25 miles,
Yes, there is
And again,
By the way, if you guys went on the YouTube to see yesterday's live, it took a really long time for me to update part 2, so it wasn't available until almost midnight last night, but it's there now.
Just again, if I could explain for the jury, a lot of this is developed for aviation.
Right.
And if you're a pilot or you think about what a pilot needs to go through, that's where these terms come from.
I
Right,
understand,
Jessica?
sir, but you,
Don't forget the Stop and Shop bag and the leaf blower.
are in the weather forecasting business, correct?
I sure am, yes.
And you, and weathercasters, we all here on TV talk about visibility on their forecast, correct?
Correct.
And they're not talking just to pilots, right? They're talking to people who are going to drive, people who are going to walk, is that correct?
And it is a challenge to communicate that, yes.
But sir, my question is, when someone, a weathercaster, weather person is talking about visibility, the main target audience are for people who are going to be driving or walking, correct? There's not pilots that they're giving.
Well, I don't know, but I would never expect, and I do broadcast meteorology, a broadcast meteorologist to say visibility was good if it was less.
Hold on, I just found out it's Nurses Week. I'll pause for that. Happy Nurses Week to all of our nurses. I appreciate you.
Than a mile and a half.
Yes, sir. I appreciate that, but my question's not, I've left whether it's good or not. I'm talking about the purpose of weathercasters speaking about visibility.
Yes.
You had indicated in your earlier answer you had tethered it to pilots, but there's also an application of the visibility concept for the rest of us in the world who drive and walk, correct?
Yes,
Isn't it useful for that?
Absolutely, and I'm trying to answer your question about whether the visibility was good.
Right, but I'm not asking that question anymore. My question is just,
I only know what you asked me.
All right, I'll try it a different way. Visibility is a concept that is used by weathercasters to assist people who are going to be walking or driving. Is that correct, sir?
Yes.
Thank you. So now let's go on to the concept of temperature. You mentioned the concept of wind chill on your direct examination. You recall that, sir?
I was asked about it, yes.
Yes. Does wind chill have a relationship to temperature, and if so, what is it?
It does have a relationship to temperature. It's a complex function that was developed by the U.S. Air Force in the 50s to help produce cold weather gear. And it was determined that wind had a major impact on our military in terms of what type of gear they needed, in addition to how low the temperature was. So it's a measurement of temperature to begin with, and then there's a complex function applied based on the wind speed to come up with how that air temperature, how that air is going to impact the human body.
So is it fair to say that if you have a temperature, and what I wanted to do is to go to the temperatures that you gave on your direct examination, is it accurate to state that, for example, on January 29th, I believe I heard you say there was a high of 29 and a low of 15. Is that correct, sir?
Yes, that was my report based on all those three locations, yes.
And you had also testified about wind speed and wind gusts as well. And can you state, if you have it in your notes?
I do, yes. It was in the report, yeah.
Yep, and what was the wind speed? Average and then high gusts?
Sure. 23 miles an hour with frequent gusts of 47 miles an hour.
So what does your number 23, how does that affect temperatures of 29 and 15?
It makes that air feel much colder. So that air, that 20-degree air, did you say 20 and
29, sir, and 15 were the numbers you had given?
That range for that day, sure.
Yeah.
So it makes that air temperature feel colder, and it allows that air to take heat out of your body more efficiently and more rapidly. So it feels much colder, and we can calculate roughly how it would feel if there was no wind at all.
And sir, thank you. You've gotten right to my next point, and I only have a few more questions left for you. So if you have the highest temperature on the 29th of 29, January 29, 2022, do you know what the wind chill factor would do in terms of a calculation number to bring that 29 number down? Do you know what that number would result in applying the most conservative wind speed of 23?
I wasn't asked to calculate that, no.
Would it be less than 0? Just an estimate.
Based on the 29 temperature?
Based on the 29.
No,
Would it
I
be
don't believe so.
Would it be in the teens?
Yes.
So the 29 would be in the teens. And then for the low of 15, approximately what number might that get down to?
Again, depending on the wind, if you looked at 5 miles an hour, again, it wasn't that wind all day, and that 15 degree might not have been corresponding to any wind at all.
Just using your average that you used on direct of 23.
The average wind, again, made it feel much colder, bitterly cold, extremely cold when you were out in the highest wind at the lowest temperature. So it may have felt like 0 to even 10 below 0 at the lowest temperature and the highest wind gusts.
So if I got that correct, so 15 was the lowest temperature you gave in direct on January 29, and you state that it would be, with the wind chill using an average of 23, would be 0 or maybe minus 10. Is that the number correct?
Again, I'm just guessing. I didn't do the calculation. I wasn't asked to do the calculation. But based on my experience of reporting in this area for 45 years, I basically get the idea of what it's like when the temperature is that low and the wind is that high. Yeah.
Right. And if we could please have the chart published back up, please. You can keep the lights on. If you just make it larger, I want to make sure Mr. Gilman has some facile with his notes. Okay. So is it correct to say that if the total accumulation for the storm was 23.8 inches, that
It's funny you asked that, Allison, because that was my first and second question for this witness as well.
Vast majority of that accumulation came well after 6 a.m.
Yes.
And as of 6 a.m., we've only got 3.9 inches compared to what the storm ended up at about 23.8. And then, importantly, from midnight on January 29th until 3 a.m., we've got just 1.2 inches, correct?
Exactly.
May I have a moment, Your Honor?
Yes.
Thank you. Please bear with me.
That's one of the benefits of having a big team. You got different people ask different questions. It's still better than the prosecutor, in my opinion.
Mr. Gilman.
I think the point is 1.25 inches is not enough to cover a human body. I think. I'm clearly not a meteorologist.
Thank you for answering my questions, Mr. Gilman.
You're welcome.
Anything else, Mr. Lally? Okay.
Right?
Mr. Gilman,
I think so.
you were asked about the snowfall between 12 a.m. and 1 a.m. How much snow again was there during that time frame?
During that time frame, about 3/10 of an inch.
Okay. And during that time frame was probably the least amount of snow that was on the ground during the course of the storm, correct?
During that hour or two previous. Yeah, there's really, in fact, I have this chart I showed, the graph the map, it just showed a trace of 0 that was less than an inch on the ground. And we measure snow on the ground in whole numbers, so it would either be 1 inch or 0.
And so that would be during what you characterize as the track-a-cat stage, correct?
Yes.
And so it's during that track-a-cat stage that there's the least amount of snow between the frozen ground and anything that may come down on top of it, correct?
And I have even better question than that, housewife, is why did the medical examiner not want to rule this a homicide?
Yes.
Now, quickly as it applies to visibility. When you were asked about visibility in 30 feet, you said all other things being equal. What are some of the things that would make it unequal?
A car in front of you, a building in front of you, a person, anything
I know
other
it's what they
than
didn't.
weather. And there are other types of weather that can lower the visibility besides snowfall, including fog.
So darkness as far as nightfall versus daytime, that would have a negative impact on your visibility?
Sustained just.
What about lighting? How would
It
lighting
wasn't homicide.
impact the visibility of an object?
I really can't say that lighting, obviously, you need some light to see anything. That's really all I could say.
And lastly, sir, as far as wind chill is concerned, again, could you explain to the jury exactly what is wind chill? What is it measuring?
Again, it was developed for the military in the 50s to help design. It was actually done here at the Natick Labs here in Massachusetts to help design cold weather gear, because prior to that time, during World War II, the Korean War, unfortunately, especially Air Force aviators were suffering. They had clothing that might have been adequate for the temperature, but because of the wind, they suffered frostbite and other ill effects. And so research was done, and the result of that was a wind chill temperature, the way it would feel to the human.
Cat, don't say that you're looking things up. We're the virtual jury. Remember, we can't look things up.
Body based on the wind on a certain temperature.
And so the wind chill is measuring the impact of
I
how
was
a
winking at
person
you.
experiences the air temperature, correct?
Exactly.
I have nothing further. Thank you, sir.
Anything, Mr. Leslie? All right, Mr. Gilman, you are all set, sir.
Thank you, sir. Have a great day. Let me ask you guys a question. When I have these lights on, does that help to keep you guys awake? Or do I have them off?
I have
Does it